Chapter 137. Your Highness, these people are the subordinates of Miss Xia Luot of the Sorofia family. They have never seen you before, so please forgive them for their lack of etiquette. I see, it's fine. Inside the room, Noah Iyer, who was following protocol with a surprised expression on her face, subtly moved the chain in her hand behind her back. Anna also stepped forward to block it. Although the two of them didn't cooperate well, it was still a high-standard emergency treatment. However, this kind of cover-up only strengthened Gulacy's suspicions. Well, I've heard about his engagement before, so you can continue. After saying that awkwardly, the blonde girl quickly left the living room. Gulacy stared blankly at the princess who was wearing the chain in her hand as she walked towards Luoya's bedroom. In her heart, her evaluation of Luoya had already dropped to the bottom. This is one of the skills of the Saint's Dagger. It allows the projection of the princess to visit the young master. They have been good friends ever since they met, and they even write letters to each other every week. Hee. After Noah Iyer left, Anna squeezed out a smile and tried her best to smooth things over. The servants of the Akot family also laughed along. Hearing these words, Gulacy's heart sank to the bottom. Originally, Gulacy thought that the Akot family was trying to enter the core of the theocracy to seize benefits. However, after seeing the situation just now, she felt that it was more likely the other way around. The royal family was secretly controlling the local Akot family and subduing the heir Luoya. Thinking about it this way, it was only natural that they would protect Luoya. The more Gulacy thought about it, the more she felt that this was the case. Although it was only a short time, she had already experienced the demeanor of the heir of the theocracy of Saint Mestre. The strong aura of a leader was obvious to all. It contained both sacredness and aggressiveness. How could such an emperor be conquered by a man? Not to mention a man who had an ambiguous relationship with his sister. After that, it was almost noon. When Gulacy and the others were about to leave, they met a black-haired, golden-eyed young man in the hall. It had to be said that Luoya's appearance had left a deep impression on Gulacy, but after experiencing all kinds of things, she was even more convinced that this young man was a gigolo. Gulacy, who felt that he had seen enough of the truth, didn't want to stay any longer. After more than an hour of discussion, some of them directly bid farewell to Anna. Thank you for your hard work, Miss Gulacy. Not at all. It's my duty to investigate these things. Gulacy waved his hand meaningfully and said goodbye to Anna, who seemed to have heaved a sigh of relief. When he walked out of the courtyard with his men, he saw a few maids drying sheets. Today's sheets are a lot harder to wash. And there's actually blood. Young master is really too rough with young Mississippi, sho. Someone's coming, don't talk nonsense. Hearing the information revealed in the gossip, Gulacy's face was already numb. She recalled A.I. Lizi's unnatural walking posture when he left Luoya's room and shook her head. In her heart, she browsed through the results of her investigation and gradually made a decision. She absolutely couldn't let her beloved young miss marry into this place. The next night, the gemstone necklace fleet. Before the dining table, Charlotte was completely unmoved by the delicacies meticulously cooked with mountain delicacies. Behind her, Grace, who had rushed back less than half a day ago, had a bitter expression on her face. She could only sigh silently in her heart. Gulacy still remembered that in the afternoon, when she had rushed back, Gulacy had rushed out of the carriage with a rare eagerness to personally welcome her, the previous observer. Unfortunately, Gulacy didn't bring the news she wanted to hear. When the servant girl and the worried but hopeful young lady looked at each other, Gulacy's heart uncontrollably ached. She knew that this was Xia Luot's attempt to start a family. It was a risk she took with great courage, but unfortunately, things didn't go as she wished. After keeping silent for a long time, Gulacy had no choice but to tell Xia Luot everything she had seen and heard. Luoya's appearance, A.I. Lizi's relationship with Noah Iyer, and the situation of the Akot family. In front of Xia Luot poured out everything in detail. And the result of that was the current situation. Xiao Luo lowered her head in silence for a long time. The atmosphere in the room was so heavy that it was hard to breathe. The servant girls looked uneasy. Gu Lacey's stomach, which was at the 3rd level of source grade, couldn't take the pressure anymore. She had never seen Xiao Luo like this before. Whether it was when she was a stubborn young girl, or when she grew up to be a genius, she had never shown such a strong sense of frustration. Even when she was in the fringe, she only suffered from insomnia, but this was the first time she couldn't even eat. "Milady, you," Gu Lacey didn't know how to continue her sentence. Xiao Luo didn't answer and only shook her head silently. Sometimes, occasionally, Xiao Luo felt that she was a person who had been abandoned by fate. Glory, splendor, wealth, and fortune. These were the impressions the outside world had of Xiao Luo and Xiao Luo. However, for Xiao Luo herself, her subjective feelings were completely different. Her father who never had time to eat dinner with her, her mother who never showed up, her dining table, her broken family, and her lonely childhood. Those were the components of Xiao Luo's childhood. Of course, as a member of Soro's clan, Xiao Luo had never lacked in material things. When she was young, she often used this to comfort herself, and the people around her would often tell her that she was blessed. She could afford expensive clothes that ordinary people couldn't even afford with their lifetime savings. She lived in a place that was comparable to the royal palaces of other nations. Her food was meticulously prepared by famous chefs. When she went out, she was accompanied by the best of the best. Therefore, Xiao Luo was blessed. And when she heard the people around her say so, she had always believed so. Chapter 138. In the tea room of Akat's house, Luoya glanced at the 2 girls across the table who were obviously not right. His small eyes were full of doubts. What's going on? What's going on today? Luoya, who had just woken up, frowned and began to recall the previous situation. Last night, the silver-haired girl who was supposed to sleep with the boy didn't arrive on time. At first, Luoya thought that his sister was asleep, but when he woke up the next day, he heard that Ai Lizzie had burrowed into his bed again. Perhaps because he had been staying up late to read books recently, Luoya slept unexpectedly well last night. He didn't feel anything at all, and he even had a dream. Luoya couldn't remember what it was, but it seemed to be related to Ai Lizzie. But it should be very satisfying, and he woke up very happy. But since the dream was fulfilled, he naturally slept for a long time. Luoya slept directly until noon, and when he woke up, he was even more shocked. He saw Nu'a-Ayar, and it was a Nu'a-Ayar with a strong curse reaction. It was obvious that Nu'a-Ayar used the skill, Afterglow of the Crown. When he saw Her Royal Highness suddenly enter his room, Luoya was stunned. The skill, Afterglow of the Crown, S projection ability only appeared once every 2 years, and its long cooldown was simply speechless. It could be said that it was quite precious. Nu'a-Ayar used this ability to see Luoya. It must be something big. Thinking of this, Luoya naturally thought of his father. Nu'a-Ayar had been active in the eastern region recently, and this time he suddenly used a big skill to flash back home. Could it be, Nu'a-Ayar, why are you here? Is there something wrong with my father? Hey. No, Uncle Kadia is fine, I just suddenly wanted to see you. In the face of Luoya's panic, Nu'a-Ayar hurriedly comforted him. After a round of explanation, the young man was finally relieved, but then he felt strange again. As the saying goes, one never visits a temple without a cause. Did Nu'a-Ayar really spend so much effort just to see him? Luoya felt that something was amiss. If it was before, Luoya could still understand. But after the birthday party, the 2 of them had only been separated for a month. Even if they missed each other, they wouldn't be in such a hurry. Moreover, Nu'a-Ayar's attitude was also problematic. It was rare for the blonde girl to be a little dispirited, or perhaps it was better to say that she had something on her mind. It was unknown what she was thinking about. Her expression was a little complicated, and there were a few times when she wanted to say something but stopped herself. Please, do you have to be so scary? What was going on? Luoya was very puzzled by the Noa Ayer's guilty attitude. He carefully thought about it, but it seemed that the Noa Ayer didn't do anything to him. He had no choice but to beat around the bush. Noa Ayer, do you have something you want me to do? I'm actually quite free recently. No. Oh right, I took some time recently to learn about the art of tea. I'll make you a cup of tea later. Oh, okay. Luoya looked at the girl who suddenly wanted to make him tea and answered vaguely. After thinking for a long time, he still couldn't figure out why the princess was so attentive. However, what he didn't expect was that it wasn't only Noa Ayer who was acting like this, even Ai Lizzie was the same. Big brother, I personally made some snacks today, please try it. Ai Lizzie was as cute as usual, but when the girl smiled and fed Luoya the snacks, the youth clearly felt something strange. It was a complicated feeling that was different from the happiness, and satisfaction of the past. Ai Lizzie had lived with Luoya for 3 years, and the girl was conceited enough to know everything about Luoya's life. She was able to catch every minute change in her brother's emotions, and could even induce him to a certain extent. It could be said that she was the ultimate form of a brother complex. But on the other hand, Luoya also understood this silver-haired girl. Ai Lizzie must have done something wrong, or done something wrong on purpose. With a preliminary judgment, Luoya blinked and didn't think too much about it. After all, if Ai Lizzie made a mistake, how could it be called a mistake? My sister is always right, even if she's wrong, she's always right. Luoya forcefully cleared Ai Lizzie's name, but he quickly realized that something was wrong. Not only Ai Lizzie and Noa Ayer, but everyone in the family seemed to treat him well overnight. The maids smiled at him, the housekeeper was more friendly than usual, and his personal maid, Anna, took care of him even more today. It was as if Luoya had transmigrated into the main character of a novel overnight, becoming the center of the world, and everyone revolved around him. If Ai Lizzie decided to treat Luoya better because she did something wrong, then what about everyone else? Could everyone have done something wrong? It was obvious that it was impossible. Could it be that they finally know how good I am? After eliminating all the correct answers, Luoya came to this conclusion, then nodded in agreement, but he quickly discovered a second problem, and that was Noa Ayer and Ai Lizzie weren't fighting anymore. At the tea table, Luoya lifted his teacup and took a sip, his gaze reverberating between the two girls who were drinking tea and thinking about something. What kind of trouble was this? Usually, if Ai Lizzie and Noa Ayer didn't fight when they met, they would at least have a war of words, and would often ask Luoya to side with them, but today? From the moment they met until now, there hadn't been any conflict between them. This was no longer a case of the sun rising from the west. If it wasn't for the sunlight shining into the room, Luoya would have gone out to see if the sun was still there. Chapter 139. Xia Lot, Sorophia. Luoya, caught. The next morning, outside the gate of the Marquis residence, Luoya, who had been waiting for a long time, stood opposite the red-haired girl and said their names. The black-haired boy looked at the girl in front of him and fell into a daze. So beautiful. Luoya couldn't help but think as he looked at the girl who politely lifted her skirt and saluted. As a person who was intimate with Ai Lizzie every day, Luoya originally thought that he had enough resistance to female beauty, but when he saw his fiancée today, Luoya found that he was still too naive. If Ai Lizzie's beauty was a creative work of art that could shock people to the core, then Xia Lot's beauty was a delicate work of art. At first glance, it wasn't that stunning, but the more one looked at it, the more one would be immersed in it. The perfect proportions, the godlike facial features, the slender body and elegant hair, the noble aura that could only be understood but not described, all of these were conveyed to Luoya. Paper person, no. Real person, very good. In terms of interests, the focus of the two could be said to be very clear. Luoya was studying, Xia Luot was making money, Luo Ye's side career was military command and territory management, Xia Luot's was fashion design and musical arts. Without a doubt, the two's interests were a bit biased and didn't have many points of contact, so after a few words, they chose to quickly change the topic and began to talk about their daily lives. Oh. Miss Xia Luot has already been involved in Sophia's decision-making for 4 years. That's really admirable. I've only been the acting lord for less than 3 years. You flatter me, Mr. Luo Ye's wise name, I have also heard of it in Rose. I am ashamed of my inferiority to carry the banner of the territory alone in the absence of relatives. Ha, Miss Xia Luot, you flatter me. Besides, it's not like I don't have any relatives. Actually, I have a younger sister that my father adopted. Her name is Ai Lizzie. At this point, Luo Ye, who was obsessed with his younger sister, couldn't stop bragging about his little cutie. His proud look was comparable to that of a father in his 40s. The reddish-brown-haired girl's face stiffened when she heard Ai Lizzie's name. She recalled Gulacy's report and couldn't help but feel a sense of disgust. However, as Luo Ye continued to brag, Xia Luot's expressionless face gradually revealed some doubts. Something's not right. Although Xia Luot and Ai Lizzie had never met before, would a normal person talk about his adopted sister in front of his fiancée? Moreover, his attitude was completely that of a parent showing off his child. Thinking of this, Xia Luot's heart skipped a beat. She recalled Luo Ye's many actions after meeting him. She realized that putting aside her prejudices, this boy still had a high score in her heart. He was even better than Xia Luot's best expectations. Could it be a misunderstanding? Xia Luot's eyes gradually lit up as she thought of this. Her heartbeat sped up a lot. However, what she didn't know was that her actions caused Anna, who was behind Luo Ye, to secretly frown. As expected, those little tricks have limited effects. Anna sighed in her heart. She had to admit that her young master had the charm to dispel rumors. Unfortunately, this wasn't enough. The servant girl put her hands behind her back and gestured towards the door. Not long after, a servant came in and reported that lunch was ready. Luo Ye and Xia Luot stood up and said their goodbyes. They returned to their respective rooms and made some preparations for the meal. Luo Ye, who was temporarily released, heaved a sigh of relief. He had to admit that making a good impression was tiring work. The servant girls took advantage of this opportunity to rush over with a bunch of cosmetics to touch up Luo Ye's makeup. At the same time, they helped him change into a more convenient outfit. By the way, where's Ai Lizzie? She's in class this morning. We should have lunch together at noon, right? Miss Ai Lizzie went out. It seems that she needs to purchase some books. She'll be back at night. I see. After trying on the clothes, Luo Ye nodded. He felt that it wasn't bad that Ai Lizzie wasn't around. In his previous conversation with Xia Luot, Luo Ye could feel the girl's resistance towards him. Luo Ye wasn't surprised by this. After all, 100-year engagement was too ridiculous. Xia Luot couldn't say anything, so Luo Ye would take the initiative to release her and harvest some good impression points at the same time. After thinking through the process, Luo Ye set off. However, he didn't know that the two girls who were afraid of losing him didn't understand his painstaking efforts and had already added food for him. Oh, right. There's also this letter. Thinking of the strange ancient letter in the book, Luo Ye put the letter in his chest pocket. He decided to ask Xia Luot if this letter had anything to do with the Sophia family. It could also be considered as a topic of conversation. The youth walked through the corridor and met up with the girl who had also changed her clothes in the dining hall. Miss Xia Luot, you're so beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Luo Ye. You're just, the girl who responded to Luo Ye with a smile suddenly stopped mid-sentence. Luo Ye blinked strangely. However, what he didn't know was that Xia Luot was looking at his neck in shock. It was the area below the youth's neck near his chest. The originally white area had a pink mark like a butterfly resting on it. It was AI Lizzie's kiss mark. Chapter 140. Uncle Kadia, thank you for your cooperation this time. It's nothing, Your Highness, you're exaggerating. I was just instructing Anna to cooperate. In the eastern front lines of Tark Fortress, Kadia was chatting happily with a blonde girl on top of the city walls. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Now that the marriage contract was successfully annulled, Luoya should be safe. The middle-aged Kadia sighed. He felt that this major event that he had been worrying about for a long time could finally be resolved. That's right. Recently, due to Luoya's marriage contract, Kadia hadn't been able to sleep well. This was because this marriage contract that didn't seem like a major event could cause too many variables. To put it simply, it was too late. If it was 3 years ago, Kadia would have approved of this marriage contract that would last for 100 years. After all, Sorofia's conditions were indeed good. Kadia had also heard of Xia Luo's reputation. She was a good child. However, the problem was that she was late by 3 years, and too many things had happened in the past 3 years. In these 3 years, AI Lizzie entered the Akat family and became an inseparable brother and sister with Luoya. For some unknown reason, Nuo Ayer had a special liking for Luoya and even became his protector. And no matter if it was AI Lizzie or Nuo Ayer, they were both Shia's top extraordinary geniuses. And from the perspective of benefits, AI Lizzie was able to stabilize the Akat family's foundation and obey Luoya almost unconditionally. Nuo Ayer was able to provide powerful political resources and protect Luoya as her own responsibility. One was in the family, while the other was in the country. These two girls were both irreplaceable. No matter who won, Kadia wouldn't have to worry. However, Xia Luo wasn't the same. No matter how strong Sorofia was, Xia Luo represented, they were still an external force. To be precise, they were a foreign force. They had the motive to take over the Akat family. Even if they didn't take over, the only benefits they could provide were financial resources. But the problem was, did the Akat family lack money? He felt that Luoya was lacking in terms of development, but the ancestral Akat overlord Kadia had a different set of logic. Lack of money? Would it be enough to fund the military? Enough? Oh, then it's fine. Kadia had never felt that Akat was short of money, especially since Luoya seemed to be doing well recently. Didn't that mean that they were not short of money? Stability was the most important thing. Money was secondary. Besides, AI Lizzie and Nuo Ayer were free to fall in love on a first-come first-served basis. Why should they give way to a marriage contract that was made for the sake of profits 100 years ago? Kadia already had a stomachache when facing two transcendent geniuses. What would happen if there were 3 of them? Don't come home one day and find that your son is gone. I take back what I said about marrying more. Don't fucking mess with these girls again. Daddy is scared. Kadia was frightened by Luoya's situation, but he felt that his son was a little strange. He didn't do anything at all, so how could he make AI Lizzie and Nuo Ayer fall in love with each other? Kadia couldn't understand, so he decided not to look at it. This time, he directly instructed Anna to take drastic measures. He didn't want Luoya's children to fall in love with him the moment they met. That would be fun. Of course, there was also the possibility that Luoya would fall in love with other people because of his beauty. That would be a little too much. Scumbags had their risks, so don't enter this line of work. As for reputation, don't worry, it's just a little bit of injustice. Kadia would come forward to clarify the matter. AI Lizzie was young, so she could be blamed for the prank. Nuo Ayer's dog leash was even more ridiculous. In 2 days, the princess would walk the dog with him and have a heart-to-heart talk. How could you blame others for thinking the wrong way? It was impossible for Sorofia to go on a blind date again. As for the aftermath, Kadia had already written an apology letter to Luoya. He just had to wait for the engagement to be cancelled before sending it back. As for Ai Lizzie and Noah Iyer, the two accomplices, it seemed like they wanted to give Luoya a lot of benefits. Ka Dia didn't care about this. He was old and didn't know how to think. Looking at the situation, this matter should be settled. After listening to Noah Iyer's report, Ka Dia breathed a sigh of relief. He felt that things were settled, but was that really the case? If there was a fortune teller here, he would probably shake his head and tell this Marquis an old saying. When the wind of fate blows, it is already difficult to stop. Xia Luo felt that the top of her head was a little heavy. In a special meeting, as the heir of an ancient family, no matter how lustful he was, he shouldn't do that kind of thing during his first meeting with his fiancée, right? Was it with the princess? Or the adopted sister of a mistress in a golden house? Or was it more like a servant or a woman? Xia Luo didn't know about this and didn't want to care about it. But at least when they met, Luoya shouldn't have left such a trace. Even if he was lying, he should have lied from the beginning to the end, right? Xia Luo was very familiar with the nobles' marriage in name only and their unfaithfulness. But in front of the person in question, it was the first time Xia Luo had seen someone cheating on her in such an open manner. I wanted to talk more, but it seems like there's no need to continue. Chapter 141. What are you looking at? Disperse. You, what are you laughing at? Your face looks like a chrysanthemum. Don't laugh. On the first day of his meeting with Xia Luo, Luoya had a hard time eating lunch. He felt like his stomach was going to hurt. Damn, why is it so shameful? I feel like I'm going to die. When the black-haired teenager looked at the chef who was explaining the fish steak in detail with a smile on his face and listened to the musician who came from afar from Lorraine perform with a smirk on his face, he could always recall the moment when he was standing in the middle of the room and being stared at by everyone. That stinking woman. How could he just leave me behind like this? This is too much of a trap. That's right. Although Luoya wanted to erase Xia Luo's public execution from his mind and firmly lock it in the trash heap of his dark history, everything became very difficult because of Xia Luo's escape. Why does the empty chair opposite me feel so mocking? Ah, don't let me remember. Roha gnashed his teeth as he ate, he was going crazy from time to time. Under the eyes of nearly 100 people, he forcefully used his bloodline ability to embarrass himself 3 times. Xia Luo's performance made the youth's head hurt. Even if the people present were his own people, Luoya couldn't stand it, especially when they stared at Luoya with strange smiles. It's an attack. It must be a substitute attack. The overheated Luoya forced himself not to run away like Xia Luo, but even so, he was a little numb. At the same time, he was also puzzled. That is, what's going on with that deceptive divination? After drinking a mouthful of cold honey wine, Luoya exhaled a long breath and began to think about how to deal with the current situation. Normally, in the original work, the marriage contract between Luoya and Xia Luo should have been maintained, and it was very likely that Luoya unilaterally didn't agree to break off the engagement. Then, if he wanted to remove this flag, Luoya should have peacefully gotten rid of this century-old trouble. But now, Xia Luo's operation was like chopping wires with a kitchen knife. The sparks and lightning along the way proved the beautiful future of the two's marriage. Luoya was stunned by this reverse operation. He had never seen such a scene before. She did want to break off the engagement at first, but the result. Luoya scratched his head and felt that it was really too difficult. With his good hand, Xia Luo didn't even need to cooperate, but now? Roha only had 1 card left in his hand. Charlotte threw 3 bombs, then the 2 of them held their cards and waited for death. No one is allowed to speak of what happened today. That's an accident, understand? After lunch, Luoya urgently gathered everyone present and repeatedly emphasized that it was an accident with the spell and that the result was wrong, but it was obvious that this warning had limited effect. On the other side, Xia Luo, who had escaped back to her room, was still feeling depressed. Miss, come out. We didn't laugh at you. In the room, Gulacy looked at the girl who had wrapped herself in the quilt and sighed helplessly. She didn't expect that Xia Luot would end up like this after using the Arbiter of Fate. Using the Arbiter of Fate bloodline to perform a fate divination would consume Xia Luot's spell power, and now the girl was unwilling to eat because of embarrassment. If this went on, even if Miss couldn't get out of bed tomorrow morning, she would at least feel dizzy. Gulacy thought of a way to comfort Xia Luot, but before she could say anything, the girl spoke first. Gulacy, what do you think of the result of my divination? The girl's trembling voice came out from under the quilt. The servant girl pondered for a moment and said from a professional point of view. It has a certain reference value, but there's no guarantee of the result. In the end, miss, what you're doing is just a rough divination with no cost and no clear goal. This kind of divination has low credibility and the success rate isn't high, and there are many loopholes. For example, the influence of the weather, the influence of the diviner's bloodline and source substance. As for specific problems, even if the divination result is correct, there are many loopholes. It had to be said that Xia Luot's questions in a hurry were mostly vague. The result of the divination was that both parties would be happy, but what was the specific definition of happiness? The divination said that two people would love each other, but how long would they love each other? Some couples felt that as long as they didn't interfere with each other like outsiders, they would be happy. Some loved each other for only a few days and then abandoned each other. These two possibilities were common among the nobles. From this, it could be concluded that Xia Luot's divination was actually meaningless. Is that so? Chapter 142. Burning, the bloodline was burning. This was what Xia Luot Sarofia and Luoya Akat felt at this moment. It was a feeling of surprise, as if something in their bodies had been awakened, as if the ancient bloodline had its own consciousness. At this moment, the hands of the young man and the young girl were connected through the ancient letter, and the curse power of the two miraculously merged together. What happened next was an explosion. It was not an explosion in the physical sense, but an explosion of the consciousness of the curse power. Intense light was emitted from the two of them, and in the white light, the two of them closed their eyes reflexively. However, what greeted them was not darkness, but an unimaginable scene. It was a scene of dozens of fleets sailing on the vast sea. Gold, silver, and gems, the art-like bow of the ships and the floating golden roses. In the midst of the sunlight and flying birds, the brown-haired beauty who was looking into the distance suddenly turned around. Her majestic gaze with a hint of playfulness seemed to have crossed the boundary of time and space and intersected with the two of them. The short illusion only lasted for a second, and the unbelievable scene came and went with the light. Blood-red light flowed on Luoya's body, and the skeleton formed by the curse power of the Gulandair appeared. Its glowing eyes stared at the letter in Luoya's hand. On the other side, the brown-haired girl lowered her head in disbelief, and looked at Gu Xian and softly said a word. Golden Fleet. Miss. After the light flashed, the door of the room was slammed open. Gulacy rushed in with the guards from both sides. For a moment, the scene was chaotic. The guards drew their swords and looked for possible enemies, but more people focused their attention on the letter. Eldest Miss, please let go of me. Young master. Grace and Anna's worried voice came from behind. Luoya hesitated for a moment and gently let go. The situation just now should be related to his bloodline. Xia Luot carefully took the letter from the young man's hand. The brown-haired girl caressed the yellowed paper and looked at the golden fire paint in silence, as if recalling the ancient legend. After a long time, the girl opened her red lips. I'm not going back. What? I've changed my mind, Mr. Luoya. Let's maintain our engagement. In front of the dumbfounded Luoya, Xia Luot said calmly. The Golden Fleet was an organization that Luoya had never heard of in history. Looking at the name, Luoya guessed that it was probably a fleet. Alright, I really don't know about this. There's nothing in the historical records of the National Library either. Luoya, the historian, spread out his hands, indicating that he had touched upon a blind spot in his knowledge. Xia Luot was not surprised by this. In fact, let alone a lord of Luoya's age, even the white-bearded old scholar of the country of scholars might not know about the legend of the Golden Fleet. That's right, the story of the Golden Fleet was not history. It had already reached the realm of legends. The reason was that there were no relevant documents passed down. According to Xia Luot, it was a story passed down by the highland elves of the Sorophia tribe. The time of the story was roughly estimated to be around 200 to 300 of the Third Era, which was about 700 to 800 years ago. There were different opinions on the location, but the mainstream view was that the current Rose Commercial Union was further south, in the territory of the Mandel Kingdom. Of course, this nuisance of a kingdom's history was only 200 years old, so it definitely had nothing to do with the Golden Fleet. However, there were some ancient legends circulating in the local area. For example, the Mandel Kingdom was once the site of a great kingdom. From time to time, there were some strange items unearthed, but the overall value was not high, so the country did not pay much attention to it. Unlike the local rumors that were so rough that only a few sentences were left, the legend of the Sorophia tribe was more complete. Just like the records of the Third Era in history, the ancient Austenite Empire had gone through a long journey of migration, and after a few changes of rulers, their organizational strength and discipline had collapsed. When humans arrived at the paradise in the west, they immediately split up. Other than a group of diehard loyalists of the Austen Empire, each leader led their own supporters to explore the New World. One of them was a tribe with Highland Elven blood. This tribe was different from the other splinter groups. Strictly speaking, they were not a peasant rebellion, but a technical team. This group of people was a research ship, or rather, many of them were part of the ancient Austen Empire's navy. In the Second Era, the vast ancient Austen Empire had a period of great adventure. People dreamed of exploring the world, excavating ancient ruins, and becoming rich overnight. Groups of adventurers advanced to the end of the horizon and the vast land. It was a bit like the era of the great geographical discovery in Luoya's previous life. In this era, the navy of the ancient Austenian Empire was very praiseworthy. According to historical records, they once fought a war with the scaled race and the sea monsters that invaded the land. They won the war and drove them out of the coastal waters, making great contributions to the expansion of human activities. Although Luoya did not know the combat power of the scaled race and the sea monsters, he could understand that they were probably very fierce since they were an ancient race. The Imperial Navy could press their heads and beat them up, so their overall strength should be quite impressive. Chapter 143. Luoya had a bad premonition. Across the table, the brown-haired girl's gaze reminded Luoya of a lot of things. If he had to describe it, it was like a beast on the verge of starvation seeing food, or a gambler at the end of the road seeing money. In short, something was wrong, and it made his hair stand on end. Wait, Miss Xia Luot, I think you should calm down first. Luoya, who sensed something wrong, waved his hand. Years of playing games with Noa had given him a premonition of danger. He thought for a moment and said, "Let me make one thing clear. This time, we are meeting for the engagement. The incident with the Golden Fleet was just an accident, an interlude, and this kind of thing only has a small probability of happening, so that's how it is. In other words, it requires a lot of contact and trial and error." "That's not what I meant. After all, I have no obligation to help you in this matter, right?" Luoya was speechless. He didn't expect that the brown-haired girl would laugh mischievously as soon as he said that. Then, her expression suddenly changed, and she reached out to wipe her eyes. "Mr. Luoya, I didn't expect you to say something so outrageous. You clearly let me use the arbiter of fate to prove our love in front of so many people, but now you don't even care about my request." Wait, don't talk nonsense." The old actor Luoya was stunned by Xia Luot's tearful appearance. He never expected that half an hour ago, he had just played the role of a fierce fiancé defending his family's honor, and half an hour later, Xia Luo played the role of a weak fiancé being bullied by a shameless scumbag. Mr. Luoya, have you forgotten the friendship between our ancestors when they joined hands to fight against the enemy? Lust, greed, these are all human nature. For the honor of our ancestors, I'm willing to use my body and wealth to satisfy you, but in contrast, you won't refuse this one and only request, right? You. Luoya pointed his finger at the girl who was wiping her tears. He was speechless for a long time. He had never thought that this usually ice-cold young miss would have such a black-bellied side. Her fake crying was more real than her real crying. I'm warning you, enough is enough. You know the situation of our engagement. Half an hour ago, you wanted to buy it with money. I deeply regret that matter, but I realize that I'm not the only one who wants to break off the engagement. The beautiful eldest miss lowered her hand that was covering her eyes. With a smile that was not a smile, she glanced at the stiff-faced Luoya. The market environment depends on the relationship between supply and demand. I seem to have misjudged the situation before and almost lost 500,000 gold coins for nothing. But that won't happen now. Mr. Luoya, what's your impression of me? Xia Luo narrowed her eyes and glanced at the young man opposite her. Her charm made Luoya's heart skip a beat, but he didn't miss the girl's slightly curved lips. TSK, this girl. My impression of you? Sure, Miss Xia Luo wants to hear the truth. Of course. Then I'll be frank, Miss Xia Luo. Although your appearance is impeccable, I think that the most important thing is your inner beauty, especially your personality. It's not cute to like to laugh at others. Oh. That's really surprising. I didn't think that there would be a time when I have the same opinion as Mr. Luoya. Facing the black-haired young man's obvious ridicule, Xia Luo smiled and touched her cheeks. She neatly retorted, Mr. Luoya, your appearance may be able to charm many girls, but unfortunately, you're not my type. Speaking of personality, I think that extorting your fiancé for the first time is worse, right? TSK, this girl is really difficult to deal with. Luoya looked at Xia Luo opposite him and found that the information from his previous life was no longer useful. Xia Luo's personality would constantly change according to the different people she treated. At the beginning, when they were strangers, she was cold and polite, but now, she was two-faced and mischievous. He had never seen her before, so he didn't know how to deal with her. Although this Xia Luo gave Luoya a deeper impression, and her flexible and intelligent charm was much greater than when she was cold, Luoya was now facing her. When Xia Luo revealed her hidden poisonous tongue, Luoya's situation was very bad. So it's like this, Miss Xia Luo. It seems that our evaluation of each other is about the same. Yes, I actually have something in common with you. To be honest, I'm a little ashamed. Chapter 144. Holding hands, this was a word with many meanings. In the most basic physical sense, it meant that two people's palms were touching. Later on, many meanings were derived from it. Some implied the establishment of a romantic relationship, some implied the alliance of two major powers, and some implied the ambiguity between an unmarried couple. Unfortunately, Luoya and Xia Luo were exceptions. I say, move a little. How do I move? This position. Then use more strength. Under Xia Luo's urging, Luoya finally changed her strength slightly. It changed from pure skin contact to a real couple's hand-holding. Isn't this still ineffective? I already said that the possibility of it being like before is very low. As long as it's possible, we should try. At least it's better than looking for clues aimlessly. Holding Xia Luo's cold and soft hand, Luoya's expression didn't change, but she couldn't help but feel a little restless inside. Putting her personality aside, Xia Luo's body was truly exquisite. This kind of perfection didn't only satisfy the visual sense, but also the sense of touch and smell. Her skin was smooth and soft, just like the silk fabric in clothes. If one got close to her, they would smell a natural and gentle fragrance. Standing next to Xia Luot, who was the standard pure and unsullied young mistress, to be honest, it was quite alluring. Luoya complained, but her body was honestly enjoying it. On the other hand, Xia Luot was in a different situation. Currently, the young girl was lowering her head and thinking about her next plan. As expected, I still need to have deeper contact with her. Xia Luot recalled the various divination and prophecy spells that she had learned. She couldn't help but admit that the level of 2 holding hands was too low. In the oldest records, in order to obtain spirit vision, the spellcasters even had to drink the blood of their target. Of course, this method was too primitive and barbaric. Xia Luot firmly rejected it, but she could still do it if it was just a little more intimate. Hug me. What? Hug me. This way, the bloodline fluctuations should be stronger. 2,000 gold coins, hurry up. This, comparing 2,000 gold coins to her own moral integrity, it seemed, 2,000 gold coins were more important. Luoya, who sold his moral integrity by weight, looked at the young girl who acted like she was doing business. He gritted his teeth and hugged her. Luoya wasn't a freeloader, so this time, Xia Luot let out a short scream and fell into the man's arms. Luoya. Can you not be so rough? Didn't you say to use force? Her body was pressed tightly against the man's shoulder. For the first time since the beginning of the experiment, Charlotte's expression changed. She took 2 deep breaths and tried to suppress her racing heartbeat. And I didn't say it was a surprise attack. Okay. You're the boss. Whatever you say is right. Luoya, who took the money, loosened his grip and let Xia Luot snuggle in his arms. Luoya, who felt the increased temptation, turned his head and avoided the young girl's jade-like eyes. Xia Luot also suppressed her breathing and heartbeat. She tried not to look at Luoya's face, which was so close to her. Instead, she looked at her neck. However, the young girl didn't expect that her shyness would lead to an unexpected discovery. Xia Luot stared at Luoya's white neck. She was a little puzzled. She remembered that there was a hickey here at noon. Why did it disappear now? Hickeys were actually bleeding under the skin caused by too much suction. Normally, it would take about a week for an ordinary person to recover if they didn't treat it. However, for extraordinaires with strong recovery abilities, it would be gone in about 2 days if they left it alone. It would be even faster for those with a physical body, about a day. However, Luoya, or rather, the Akot family, was obviously not in this situation. It had only been a few hours since noon, so how did the hickey disappear? Have you treated the neck? Chapter 145. A week later, in the study of the Akate family, Roha looked at the small clock and calculated the time in his heart. It was early in the morning, and the maids who had woken up early were busy. The kitchen staff went out to purchase items and would prepare breakfast in a short while. Luoya leaned on the large chair in the study and scanned the books in front of him. He felt like he had taken the college entrance exam in his previous life. Doing the questions until he understood what to do just by looking at the beginning and a few keywords. That was Luoya's youth in his previous life, and recently, Luoya was like a grandfather returning to his youth. A lot of things happened in this week, the most important of which was the buyout by the capitalist dog Miss Xia Luot. That's right, Xia Luot wanted to buy AI Lizzie for a month for 100,000 gold coins, but this plan was rejected by Luoya. In his words, this was AI Lizzie's home, and it was up to AI Lizzie to decide whether she wanted to live here or not. Ever since that night when Luoya was forced by Xia Luot to act out a fiancé and fiancé scene of love at first sight, AI Lizzie was completely flustered. When she heard that the original plan had led to Xia Luot throwing the coin of destiny 3 times in a row, AI Lizzie couldn't take it anymore. However, that wasn't the end of it. Afterwards, the two of them even used the letter she found to stimulate the bloodline connection, and the aftermath caused a sensation in the entire mansion. When AI Lizzie heard this, she regretted her actions and hugged her pillow in grievance and began to cry. After knowing each other for 3 years, this was the first time AI Lizzie missed her nemesis, Noah Iyer. Now that Xia Luot had the identity of fiancé, the results of 3 divination, and the bloodline connection, it could be said that she had the upper hand. AI Lizzie was alone and couldn't hold on much longer. Unfortunately, Noah Iyer was cut off at the Eastern Front line due to communication problems. AI Lizzie couldn't become a friend even if she wanted to. She could only rely on Luo Ye's pampering and stick to her elder brother as much as possible. Elder brother won't marry that woman? He really won't. You're not lying to AI Lizzie, right? I'm really not lying to you. We're currently looking for clues about the Golden Fleet mentioned in the letter. Our current relationship is just a disguise. Luo Ye helplessly explained to AI Lizzie. As a large family, the Sorofia family's strength would definitely increase greatly once they found the curse system and the method of the promotion ceremony. Faced with such a situation, the Austin Empire would definitely do everything possible to suppress them. Therefore, Luo Ye and Xia Luot's investigation was currently under the cover of a marriage contract. Of course, everything was for the sake of caution. In fact, the combination of Luo Ye and Xia Luot couldn't compare to the reputation of the experts and scholars who investigated this matter in the past, so even if it was announced, it might not be taken seriously. However, it was always better to be safe than sorry. Under Luo Ye's persuasion, AI Lizzie understood the importance of this matter. After receiving Luo Ye's guarantee, she suddenly expressed her desire to go to the holy capital. One of the reasons AI Lizzie made this choice was naturally because of the deal Luo Ye mentioned. The other reason was that AI Lizzie discovered that as long as she was around, Xia Luot would take the initiative to get intimate with Luo Ye. On the contrary, the two of them were more normal when she wasn't around. Without a doubt, this was the revenge of Xia Luot who saw through AI Lizzie's intentions. However, the silver-haired girl, as an adopted sister, couldn't do anything in the face of Xia Luot's righteous fiancé. She could only helplessly avoid the battle and yearn to go to the holy capital to find Noah Iyer to discuss this matter in detail. Big brother, you must protect yourself well. Don't fall in love and wait for me to come back. Thinking back to how AI Lizzie rubbed against his chest and said these words while crying, Luo Ye didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He and Xia Luot only had a deal and didn't see eye to eye. How could there be any feelings between them? Sigh, children these days are so young and their minds are filled with love and affection. How impractical. Gold coins, isn't it good? Thinking up to this point, Luo Ye shook his head. He was abnormally satisfied with his life of earning thousands of gold coins every day. However, it had to be said that Luo Ye was still a responsible person. Since he took the money, he had to do it, let alone this much money. Starting from the second day after AI Lizzie left, Luo Ye and Xia Luot began a life similar to a summer camp. Since they slept early, Luo Ye would come to the study at 5:00 every day to look for clues. As a girl, Xia Luot would come later, around 6 o'clock. It had to be said that after spending a week together and having a common goal, the two of them already had a certain degree of tacit understanding. There was quite an atmosphere of office colleagues. The black-haired boy looked at the time and entered the tea room. He took 3 spoonfuls of high-quality Shigong tea and poured it into a tea net. After the water boiled for about 3 minutes, he washed the tea and poured it. Then, he took out Luo Ye's unique mysterious formula. Hypnosis Spell Resistance Potion Type 3, the third version of the main potion used by Cassie of the Kingdom of Sleep to resist the Dream Demon. Only 1 drop is needed to wake up the mind and bid farewell to sleep. Chase after these damned monsters and fight. However, for your safety, don't drink too much at once. Price, 300 gold coins, not bad, this was the good stuff that Luo Ye found in the system store. 300 gold coins wasn't very expensive. The amount was about the size of a small test tube, but it was very durable. Only one drop was enough to make people work efficiently for a day. The price was that they couldn't dream. Honestly, this price was almost the same as nothing. In terms of color and taste, Hypnosis Spell Resistance Potion Type 3 was a reddish-brown color similar to black tea. The taste was very light, almost non-existent. When Luoya first saw this item, he thought that it was like black tea concentrate, but after actually using it, he found that it was really refreshing. Moreover, after drinking it, no one would attack him or make him scream. Reading books every day was fine as a hobby, but when it became a rough scanning and browsing, even Luoya couldn't bear the burden of reading for a day. It had to be said that manual baidu wasn't something that anyone could do. After carefully pouring a small drop into the teacup, Luoya's black tea was completed. After that, he followed the same formula, but this time, he brewed a type of flower tea exclusive to Akot territory. This was naturally brewed for Xia Luot. As the producer of the top-grade Shigong black tea, Rose's own people drank it so much that they almost vomited. So when Golden Rose accidentally drank Akot territory's specialty flower tea a few days ago, she was very curious. Chapter 146. In Luoya's previous life, when he was studying in university, he often went to the library to study under the pressure of failing his subjects. At that time, he was hurt. The library's 3 ultimate methods of killing dogs, holding hands, leaning on shoulders, and whispering. As a single person, Luoya was caught off guard. In a trance, the dog's head fell to the ground and barked. But he never thought that one day, he would become a member of this group of people. Feeling the smooth and soft touch in his hand, Luoya couldn't help but sigh at the difficult working conditions. In order to prevent missing any useful information that might lead to the creation of spirit vision, Luoya and Xia Luot had been reading books hand in hand for the past few days. But it was a pity that there wasn't much progress so far. After several fruitless physical contact, Luoya and Xia Luot began to shift their attention and focused on investigating the letter. As the content of the letter was too short, the two of them only found 2 entry points after flipping through it a few times. The first was naturally the location in the letter, Twin Horn Harbor. Luoya wasn't clear about the location of the Twin Horn Harbor. The only thing he knew was that it wasn't in the territory of Akot territory. After seeing the name of this place, he tried to search for it, but the map collected by the Akot family didn't have this name. In the beginning, Luoya thought that it was a problem with the map. In this era, maps weren't something that could be found on the streets like in his previous life. On the contrary, maps were extremely precious strategic items. In this era without high-tech observation methods, map drawing relied on manual labor. This was a highly technical, tiring, and dangerous job. After all, no overlord would be willing to let others know their geographical location and strategic points. If anyone secretly drew a map, they would be caught and tortured. This was because if someone came to your house to inspect the terrain, it basically meant that someone was thinking about you. Even royal geographers with formal authorization had a very difficult job in the various territories. Not to mention the various underhanded tactics of the lords, even if they did nothing, it would be considered good for ordinary people to finish mapping a piece of land in their lifetime just by going up and down mountains and down rivers. And in Xia, this danger would be magnified once again. That was because there were more than just ferocious beasts in the deep mountains and forests of this region. Many of the mutated animals could not even be stopped by high-level superhumans. Normal geographers would probably die the moment they encountered them. The above reasons eventually led to the shortage of Xia's maps, but don't think that this is the end. Getting the map was just the threshold, or the first step. There would be greater challenges waiting for you next, such as distinguishing whether the map was real or fabricated. The geographer's moral integrity was not so good. Just like some islands in the Atlantic Ocean in Luoya's previous life, in ancient times, the reason why they were drawn on the map was that the geographer missed his wife when he was drawing the map, so he drew an island for her. Some people simply wanted to be famous. They would fabricate a place and start bragging about it. Anyway, no one would be able to find it. Similar situations existed in Xia, which led to a very interesting phenomenon. That was, the feudal lords spent money to collect the maps, but when they looked at the names, they would find that they were all drawn in the same area. Then there was the traditional art of guessing. One of us is real. Guess which one is it? This kind of speechless situation was encountered almost every new territory. Fortunately, Akkad territory had a history of thousands of years, so it was very clear what it looked like. However, it was a bit difficult to guess other places. Whether it was the century map of the theocracy or the internal strategic map of the Third War of the Mutated Species, the major regional maps did not indicate this port called Twin Horn Harbor. However, to Luo Ye's surprise, Xia Luo actually answered this question instantly. Ah, Twin Horn Harbor is the Cursed Bay. Don't you know? I don't know. Do these two names look like they have anything to do with each other? Luo Ye looked at the brown-haired girl speechlessly. After a long time of hard work, he found out that Twin Horn Harbor was a name unique to the locals of the Cursed Bay. Cursed Gulf, this name was much more famous than Twin Horn Port. At least a lot of people in Akkad City knew about it. The reason was simple. It was close to Cursed Gulf. It was an undeveloped area on the east side of Warren Mountain Range. Of course, the reason why it was undeveloped wasn't because Akkad and Rosetta were lazy, but because of the literal meaning of the name, which was the curse of Cursed Gulf. To put it bluntly, it was the low temperature. The curse of the Cursed Bay was actually the cold. According to records, the temperature in that area was extremely low for some reason. It was somewhat similar to the North Pole in Luo Ye's previous life. It seemed that there was indeed a port with a good terrain, but unfortunately, this port was an eternal frozen port. It was covered in snow all year round. This situation that obviously went against the climate of the nearby area naturally aroused people's curiosity. During the pioneering era, many adventurers rushed into that world of ice and snow, but they often disappeared. There were only a few people who could return. The word curse came from the mouths of the survivors. The adventurers were not stupid. It was impossible for there to be any civilization ruins in this bay, and the benefits they could obtain were very little. After a series of failures, no one was interested in this place anymore. Over time, this untouched bay became the Cursed Bay in people's mouths. This was Luo Ye's understanding of this remote place in front of his own home. And according to Xia Luo, that place became a difficult project for Sorophia in recent decades. Loche was founded on commerce, and the port is especially important for commercial activities. The terrain there is a natural good port. Sorophia's ancestors once wanted to develop it as a distribution center for the central part of the continent, but they were unable to solve the problem of low temperature, especially in winter. The temperature there is even unbearable for horses. Xia Luo roughly explained the Sorophia family's resentment towards the Twin Horn Port. The two combined the current situation and looked at the letter, and naturally found a clue. According to the letter and the information obtained from the spirit vision, the golden ship led by the Queen arrived at the Twin Horn Port in mid-April. The fact that the ship could arrive meant that the Twin Horn Port could be passed through normally at that time. It was obviously different from the current situation of the eternal frozen port. The purpose of this letter was to report the arrival date. The recipient was the Akkad family, and the Twin Horn Port was not far from Akkad territory. After a comprehensive analysis, Luo Ye and Xia Luo initially thought that there were two possibilities. The first was that the recipient, the Lord, would go to meet them and both sides would meet at the Twin Horn Port. The second was that the recipient, the Lord, would wait on the spot and meet the Queen in Akkad territory from April to May. The third was that the Queen did not arrive for some reason, and both sides cancelled the trip, and the letter became invalid. They abandoned the third possibility, which was possible but useless to the two of them. In theory, they should be able to find clues in the historical records. Chapter 147. Young Mistress, what do you think of young Master Luo Ye? Early in the morning, in Xia Luo's room, the servant girl was combing the girl's hair while asking this question. Hearing Gulacy's question, Xia Luo was stunned for a moment before replying the same way she did a few days ago. Of course, it's to disguise our relationship as an engaged couple. Didn't I tell you before? Disguise? The black-haired servant girl muttered to herself after hearing Xia Luo's answer. She couldn't help but feel that something was amiss. It had been more than a week since she came to the Akat family. As Xia Luo's personal servant girl, Gulacy discovered a very serious problem. As time went by, the frequency of young mistress mentioning a certain person's name was getting higher and higher. Just like now. That guy Luo Ye's ancient Austin language is beyond imagination. He's obviously a member of the theocracy, so why would he learn that kind of language? Yesterday's clothes were not bad, but the style was a little old-fashioned. If I were to tuck in the shoulders, although I'm not sure, his supernatural power doesn't seem to be weak. He's hemming and hawing and isn't willing to talk about the details. So young mistress, why do you want to know the details? Aren't you in a cooperative relationship? Why do you want to know so much about him? Gulacy frowned in confusion. After learning that Luo Ye's information was the result of being misled, Gulacy was extremely vigilant against the servants of the Akat family. At the same time, she began to re-evaluate this engagement. Although the beginning between young mistress and Luo Ye wasn't perfect due to a freak combination of factors, it had to be said that the current Luo Ye could indeed cause Xia Luo's mood to fluctuate. The furthest distance in love was never discussed, but indifference and indifference. This was what Gulacy was most worried about Xia Luo. Xia Luo was naturally a little cold to others. This was the shadow of her childhood. She didn't rely on others too much and didn't trust others too much. Unless someone really walked into her heart, no matter how good their relationship was, it was just superficial. At that time, Gulacy conservatively estimated that it would take a few months to break through this ice layer, but the reality was beyond her imagination. The first time they met, Luo Ye had a bad impression of Xia Luo, but recently, as they got to know each other better, the situation seemed to be turning around. This shouldn't be a deliberate trick, right? Gulacy, who had been fooled by the Akat family's maid group, was a little traumatized. He asked Xia Luo how she felt, but he didn't expect the girl to laugh after listening to him. I will like that guy. Ha ha ha, Gulacy, what are you thinking? How is that possible? Facing the worried maid, Xia Luo looked as calm as empty Tai after hearing a joke. You heard what I said before, right? That guy is the complete opposite of us Rose nobles. He has little understanding of art and music, and his fashion sense can't keep up with my footsteps. Moreover, he isn't romantic at all. If this was in Rose nobles, any of the nobles would have already written a love poem. Gulacy listened to Xia Luo's words and wanted to say something, but he hesitated. What about opposite interests and hobbies? After all, it depends on how one interprets it. Not good at art and music. Then wouldn't they complement each other? As for love poems, aren't those things a failure? In short, that guy and I are just an equivalent exchange. It's a transaction under the cover of a marriage contract. Xia Luo crossed her arms and judged the relationship between the two. Gulacy looked at Miss in the mirror with a complicated expression. He suddenly remembered the 3 fate divinations that had been forgotten. Those, were they really not new at all? The black-haired maid shook her head slightly. She didn't know the answer to this question and could only silently pray for Miss good luck. Why did you suddenly fall asleep today? In the study, the reddish-brown-haired girl looked at the black-haired boy who was sleeping on the table next to her. She blinked her eyes in confusion. Today was the 10th day of the two's intensive training of browsing records. After half a month of getting along, Xia Luo had basically gotten used to the life in the Akat family. To a large extent, she understood the fiancé beside her. Therefore, she had the current doubts in her heart. In her impression, Luo Ye wasn't as vigorous as a dragon or fierce as a tiger, but at least he was full of energy. At least in these 10 days of boring browsing, although he would sometimes be absent-minded, he never showed any signs of fatigue. Xiao Luo honestly admired him on this point. Don't look at how Miss came punctually every day to search for information with Luoya. Both of them worked until 9 p.m. before going to bed. In fact, Xiao Luo had her own means to replenish her energy. Gulacy, Xiao Luo's personal maid, was a master of Source Level 3. Not to mention her combat skills, she had learned a lot of daily curses. One of them was Gulacy's unique, deep sleep, which was a consummate recovery technique. Deep sleep allowed Xiao Luo to rest for a night as much as others would rest for a few days. This guaranteed that she would wake up every morning feeling refreshed and healthy. Moreover, there were almost no side effects. This recovery technique could be said to be the foundation of Xiao Luo's many years of high-intensity work. Chapter 148. What's going on now? In the study, Luoya woke up after 2 hours of sleep. He looked at the blanket on his body, then turned his head to look at the girl beside him. His gaze shifted back and forth between the two. This is yours. Thank you. I'm not in a good state today, so I accidentally fell asleep. Luoya raised the blanket and thanked her. Xiao Luo nodded slightly. The young man observed the girl beside him, and suddenly felt that she seemed to be angry. Although her face was calm and she didn't reprimand him, Xiao Luo's overall temperament had changed a little. Her usual noble and unapproachable aura had become somewhat cold and sharp. Luoya had experience with such changes, and had even studied them before. He believed that this was a manifestation of an extraordinary mood affecting the fluctuations of curse power. The black-haired young man gently placed the blanket to the side. He was no longer in the mood to think about the connection between the girl's temperament change and her curse power. Compared to that, he was more interested in finding out what was going on. Is she angry because I slacked off? That can't be. The most serious words were greedy, shameless, childish, and so on. Luoya, who was used to Zhu En's trolls in his previous life, didn't feel any pain at all. In fact, he even thought that Xiao Luo was quite cute when she squeezed out these words with a red face. Xiao Luo was a dog rich, and not the kind of rich person who worked as a concubine, but the kind who spent money every day. How could someone like her be angry because he slacked off for a while? Wasn't this the same as how a Saudi prince was angry at a roadside oiler for wasting gas? How is this possible? What's going on? The black-haired young man glanced at the girl from the corner of his eyes, but didn't say anything. He could only work on the side. After this restless atmosphere lasted for 2 minutes, the girl suddenly spoke. Why did you fall asleep today? I'm not in a good state. Not in a good state today. What about a few days ago? A few days ago. I was all right. Ha, is that so? Xiao Luo smiled with a hint of anger. She stared into Luoya's eyes and asked, did you drink some kind of medicine? Yes, but my potion is still okay. Leave it to me tomorrow. Ah. What? Leave it to me tomorrow. You're not allowed to drink anymore. Luoya looked at Xiao Luo's serious expression. He finally understood why she was angry, but then he was puzzled. This should be because she was worried about me. But why? Luoya didn't understand what was wrong with Xiao Luo's brain. Why did she want him to drink Red Bull? But he knew that Xiao Luo probably treated his medicine as harmful. Actually, that medicine of mine is all right. The side effects aren't that big, that won't do. Many drugs with minor side effects are addictive. It's better to use drugs with strong side effects. Xiao Luo glanced at the pile of books that had been piled up over the past few days and warned her sternly, there are so many things. Take your time to find them. If you continue to use the potions recklessly, I will have no choice but to write to Uncle Kadia. No, I'll give it to you tomorrow. Luo Ye hurriedly waved his hand when he heard that Xia Luo wanted to report to his parents. Because of the Golden Partners incident, Ka Dia strictly forbade Luo Ye from drinking any potions. If he wrote to his parents, Ka Dia might even ask for leave and come back to scold him. Chapter 149. The Austin Empire. In the vast Rumen forest, the observation platform at the edge of the mountain peak was already filled with people. Countless luxurious carriages and precious horses were gathered in front of the palace complex that had been built with a huge amount of money. Couples were holding hands as they squeezed out and walked into the main hall. This was the most famous dating spot in the Austin Empire, the Rumen Palace complex. It was famous across the continent. Every February, countless couples would gather in this palace that had hundreds of years of history, overlooking the thousands of miles of mountains and rivers of the Rumen forest, as well as the butterflies. Indeed, this was a sacred place to see butterflies. The weather in the Rumen forest was hot and rainy, and there was no snow all year round. Every February, a butterfly called the luminous butterfly would lay eggs here, and after a few months of incubation, it would transform into a beautiful queen of the night. This kind of mythical butterfly was just like its name. It would emit light in the dark, and the brightest one would be the leader of the group. It was definitely pleasing to the eye, but the reason why butterflies and couples were related was because of the Austin Empire's stories and propaganda. Legend had it that a few hundred years ago, the Austin Empire's emperor, Charles II, had proposed to the queen of the Rona dynasty, who was quite powerful at the time. The queen did not want to agree, so she said that she wanted to see the most beautiful thing. Charles was not prepared at that time, and he picked up a luminous butterfly egg on the ground. Under the catalysis of his curse, the butterfly hatched into a luminous butterfly leader, shocking everyone present. The queen's attitude changed when she saw this, and she felt that the two were fated to be husband and wife, so she agreed to the proposal. The Rona dynasty was then merged into the Austin Empire's territory, making the empire more prosperous and powerful. The above was the legend passed down in the Austin Empire, and it could basically be seen as an exaggeration. Luo Ye felt that the story of this legend was not bad, but as for its authenticity, he could not help but laugh. Although he had not seen any historical records and could not tell if the story was true or false, with the character of the little tyrant, the Austin Empire, if the proposal failed, the next step would be to use force. After all, which king of a small country would agree to a big country annexing a small one? Wouldn't that be retarded? Ignoring the truth and being cruel. The Austin Empire's skin is still so thick. Ah, I understand. After all, they have unified a big country, and the marriages of the neighboring countries should be unified. As for the Austin Empire, everyone who knows. Pooh. Listening to Luo Ye's sarcasm, Xia Luo could not help but laugh. One of them was born in France, while the other was born in the theocracy. Their families had been anti-Arab fighters for generations, so they got along quite well in this respect. But it has to be said that although the legend was nonsense in their ears, it was because Roja and Charlotte looked at it from a political point of view. In the market of men and women, this legend has a large audience. Ever since the legend became popular, more and more couples came to the edge of the forest to hatch the eggs of the luminous butterfly to express their love to their loved ones. After hundreds of years of publicity, the forest had become a world-renowned love sanctuary. The viewing palace complex in front of them was specially built by Austin for the nobles of various countries. Every February, when the luminous butterflies had just laid their eggs, this place would be crowded with nobles from various countries to participate in a series of interesting and exciting special activities. It could be called a love sanctuary. Of course, in contrast, the luminous butterflies in the Rumen forest suffered. They were kidnapped and turned into tool butterflies before they were even born. Honorable sir, madam, may I have a look at your invitations? Of course. At the entrance, a polite and friendly waiter took the invitation from Xia Luo with both hands. The two of them were a perfect match, and their dignified and calm appearance made the waiter not suspicious at all. After a quick check, he returned it with both hands. Welcome, Countess Roland of the Mandel Kingdom, Miss Xia Luot. The waiter's smile became even more enthusiastic because of their noble status. The two of them smiled at each other and entered the venue arm in arm under the guidance of the staff. Feeling the touch of Xia Luot beside her, Luoya couldn't help but be amazed by the magic of Serophia's curse. The Akkad territory of the Saint Maester theocracy was thousands of miles away from the Austin Empire. Naturally, the two of them weren't using their original bodies. Instead, they were using a spell unique to the Serophia clan that used twin stones. The twin stone was a unique and rare mineral that had a strange spatial connection. Usually, there were two of them in a pair. When one of them reacted to the curse, the other would react the same way even if they were thousands of miles away. It was the raw material for many expensive wedding rings. The Akkad family also had this stone, but it had never been used. However, in the hands of Serophia, an expert in gold coins and gems, using the twin stone as a catalyst, she could form a body similar to the three skills of Afterglow of the Crown, from thousands of miles away. Although compared to the short blade of a saint, this body had almost no attack power, but it was not a problem at all if it was just a trip or a holiday party. In this era without advanced communication technology, people's faces were not that familiar. Even a famous beauty like Xia Luot was the same. Plus, the two of them were using alternate accounts, so there was no security issue, so they didn't make any changes to their appearance. Reality was reality. Even if Xia Luot was beautiful, the two of them didn't cause any commotion after entering the palace. Of course, this was because the two of them entered the lovers section. Everyone was busy with their other half, so no one had the time to care about others. If they were in the singles section, Luoya didn't know how he would look, but Xia Luot would definitely become a hot topic. He would probably be drowned by the army of single men. "Sir, this is your incubator." "Yes, thank you." After entering the venue, the staff immediately handed a metal box the size of a palm to Luoya. The black-haired young man took it with a smile and began to observe it. The people who came to participate in this event were either rich or noble. Naturally, the nobles wouldn't go looking for butterfly eggs themselves. This small box was designed for this purpose, and it had two main functions. First, holding the box would prevent people from touching the butterfly eggs themselves. After all, those things were disgusting to some people, so touching them was really uncomfortable. Chapter 150. When Xia Luot casually said this sentence, Luoya was speechless for the first time. He stared blankly at the woman in the blue dress who was talking and laughing with the man and the expressionless Xia Luot. For a moment, his mind went blank. If she was Xia Luot's mother, then who was he? Luoya looked at the blonde man who was talking to his mother-in-law in name and his face stiffened. As the marriage partner, Luoya had naturally seen Xia Luot's family records. He had seen the portraits of the girl's family. Xia Luot's biological father, Bruce, was a brown-haired muscular man. He was obviously not the blonde from before. Most importantly, the information did not say that Xia Luot's parents were divorced. During their marriage, Xia Luot's mother came here. What was the situation now? Catching adultery? Catching his own mother in the act? Was it that exciting? Luoya stared at the girl beside him with wide eyes. He was really shocked by the plot of the TV series. Before this, Luoya only thought that Xia Luot wanted to see butterflies and was unwilling to enter the singles area to cause trouble, so she kidnapped him to be a tool. But now, it seemed that was not right. What should he do now? Destroy the scene? That shouldn't be the case. It was impossible. The two of them were not in their original bodies. Any source level 6 would be able to defeat them. If that was the case, I understand. You want to collect evidence, right? How should I do it? I haven't learned much about curses in this area. Luoya looked at the man and woman in front of him excitedly. He was ready to go, just like a tabloid reporter, waiting for a curse to deliver justice. However, What he did not expect was that the brown-haired girl was stunned when she heard Luo Ya's words. What's wrong? You're welcome. Forget about the others, I will definitely help you with this. The black-haired young man patted his chest and turned into a Tauran executioner. He looked ahead and gritted his teeth. Damn it, the Tauran must die. Yellow-haired dog is obviously not a good thing. Luo Ya rubbed his fists, but Xia Luo looked embarrassed. She wanted to say something but stopped several times. In the end, she forced a smile on her face. Thank you, Luo Ya, but, forget it. Xia Luo smiled sadly and turned to look ahead. You misunderstood. I'm not here to do anything. I just want to see her. Take a look. The last time I saw her was 5 years ago. Luo Ya's eyes widened when she heard Xia Luo's words. The girl pondered for a while before finally downplaying her situation. It was a story that Luo Ya could not find any trace of in the information, and it was also a narrative that made him unable to calm down for a long time after listening to it. To be honest, Xia Luo's situation was a little beyond his imagination. Xia Luo's mother, Adela Milton, was the second daughter of Duke Milton of the Austen Empire. This family was a big family with a long history, originating from the ancient Austen Empire in the Second Era. Strictly speaking, their heritage was longer than Luo Ya's Akate family. With such a long history, their power was naturally not to be underestimated. In fact, in the beginning of the Third Era when humans migrated to the West, the Milton family was in the position of manager. What happened next was well known. After arriving at the New World, the internal conflicts that had been hidden in the human team erupted. The ancient Austen Empire fell apart. For a time, there were many factions, and everyone went their own way. Milton was a stubborn conservative at that time. As a vested interest, he was unwilling to recognize any organization that escaped from his control. Milton and several other big families of the ancient Austen Empire were the foundation of the establishment of the Austen Empire. In order to highlight their own orthodoxy, this group of remnants of the ancient Austen Empire came up with the famous Orthodox bloodline theory. The Orthodox bloodline theory could be summarized as the theory that except for the Austen Empire, everyone was unruly. This theory was based on history and touted the bloodline of the ancient Austen nobles as noble bloodlines. They were superior bloodlines that should dominate other countries. The citizens of the Austen Empire were Shia's first-class citizens, and the other countries were at most second-class citizens. This theory greatly condensed the power of the Austen Empire for a certain period of time, causing it to annex the surrounding countries after its reconstruction, and its territory continued to expand. In the eyes of the Austen Empire, their war was just and righteous, and it was a punishment for those who violated it. The land that they conquered was not an invasion, but a return. The Orthodox bloodline theory was the root of the Austen Empire's arrogance. After becoming a big country, it became even more popular among the people. Among them, the extremists even advocated marriage between the nobles to prevent the noble bloodline from flowing out. Xia Luo's mother, Adelisa, was a beneficiary and believer of the extreme bloodline theory. More than 10 years ago, in order to improve the relationship with the Austen Empire, Rothschild strongly supported the moderate Milton family. Adelisa, as the representative of the Union, married the president of the Rothschild Union, Bruce. This was the background of Xia Luo's family, a castle in the sky without a trace of romance and freedom. It was completely driven by profit, and there were only results. Luo Ya once heard a saying in his previous life, when a marriage collapses, the weaker one will be hurt more. This saying was perfectly replicated in Xia Luo. Adelisa abandoned Xia Luo. In the eyes of this bigoted woman, Xia Luo was unclean and had insulted the noble bloodline of the Milton family. Her existence was a stain on her. Chapter 151. What kind of person could be called beautiful and noble? Perhaps this question was too complicated. What was the object of beauty? Where did the concept of nobility come from? Luo Yi did not have the ability to analyze this question from a philosophical point of view, but he at least knew one thing. That was, the values of an ordinary person could not be more normal. If there was anything that could be called a mother's beauty, then perhaps it was the gentle smile she revealed when she stroked her child's head. If there was anything that could be called a woman's nobility, then it was the shining quality and thought that was deeply embedded in their bones. A beautiful face that was meticulously groomed, a self-constructed identity that was superior to others, these things were like bubbles that popped in the face of true beauty and nobility. When the wind of time and era blew, everything would be replaced with the real. Luo Yi looked at Xia Luo in front of him, suddenly understanding where the injustice in his heart came from. Ah, so that's how it is. It's because the two of us are mostly similar, but slightly different. The black-haired youth revealed a relieved and helpless smile, watching the light in his hand as he exerted more force. Luo Yi, Akat, everything seemed to have started from his past life, but in fact, this was wrong. Although it was very little, Luo Yi vaguely remembered his past naughty and weak self. It was a distant memory that he could barely remember, but faintly existed in his heart. It was the pain and confusion of a child who lost his mother at a young age. It was a pain that was difficult to avoid during his growth. The desire for affection and love accompanied his childhood, but was often unable to obtain them, and gradually became distorted because of this. Luo Yi and Xia Luo were similar. They had both struggled alone in an empty home, accompanied by candlelight. When night fell, the moonlight in the room was their only companion. He sympathized with Xia Luo, and at the same time, with his past self who had not remembered everything. But the two of them were different, and that was that Xia Luo actually had a mother. Adelisa, this woman's actions, although slight, had indeed pricked Luo Yi's nerves, making him feel a deep sense of disgust. This was the feeling that this woman gave him when she threw something that he couldn't get to her on the ground and trampled on it. Some people say that the more muddied the environment, the brighter the rose that blooms. In that case, Miss Xia Luo, your kindness and strength are the golden rose in my eyes. In the light and waves, the black-haired boy looked into the girl's eyes and said. His golden pupils were now emitting layers of light, majestic and mysterious. The crimson power of the spell was like a flame rolling and multiplying endlessly. Xia Luo stared into his eyes and suddenly saw a little pity in them. In just a few seconds, Xia Luo's pale face quickly turned red. Luo Yi smiled gently. He raised his hand and the red curse power turned into a spiral and drilled into the box. The incubator creaked and was full of cracks. Crack! In the crisp sound of the box breaking, Luo Yi's hand emitted a little light. At the same time, on the high platform in the distance, a ball of light also spread its wings amidst the cheers of the nobles of the Austin Empire. It was a luminous butterfly with a pair of green wings. The moment it appeared, the light reflected on the cheeks of everyone around it. The pure-blood nobles of the Austin Empire sang and danced, and Adelisa's face also showed a smile. The most beautiful and dazzling butterfly to appear in the pure-blood faction was designed by the Milton family over the years. It represented their nobility and elegance. But this year, the one hatched by the Prince of the Empire was especially beautiful, and its light was also the brightest in all the years. The butterfly broke out of the cocoon and spread its wings. It was about to spread its wings amidst the exclamations of the crowd. No one doubted the status of this butterfly. It was the most powerful and moving one in all the years, just like the Austin Empire, no one could stop it. The cheers of the crowd were loud and enthusiastic, but soon someone realized that something was wrong. Wait, why isn't it flying down? No, none of the butterflies have flown away. The nobles of the Austin Empire who were looking up at the sky also realized that something was wrong. The young masters and young ladies of the noble families also began to whisper to each other. The guests who came from afar looked at the butterflies hovering above their heads without knowing anything. Everyone's eyes were focused on the black-haired young man in the corner of the high platform. Luo Yi was still suppressing the power of the spell to flow into the incubator. He had already seen the butterfly in the Austin Empire, so he decided to give it his all. This butterfly was not only a competition of personal feelings, but also the first gift to Xia Luot. It must be kind and beautiful, just like the girl in front of him. The moment it was born, the butterflies of the Rumen forest would have a new leader, and it would be born as a king. Luo Ye was giving it his all, but what he did not know was that at the end of the world where no one could reach, the huge skeleton was also watching. His eyes were shining, waiting for the miracle buried in time to appear again. It's done. A few seconds later, the black-haired young man said so softly. What followed was a muffled sound and a bright spiral of light. The incubator exploded. The cage that held the butterfly egg had completely fallen to the ground and shattered into pieces. In the soft sound of the pieces falling to the ground, the butterflies moved. Chapter 152. When Xia Luot's kiss landed on his face, Luo Ye's mind went blank, but he found it hard to refuse. Not only was the kiss irresistible, but it also represented Xia Luot's sincerity. This was a kiss that represented blessings and luck. It was a reward from a lady to a man who brought her beautiful butterflies. It was reasonable, formal, and irresistible. Luo Ye didn't know how much determination Xia Luot had to make such a move, but at the very least, it should be far more difficult for her to make such a move than it was for ordinary girls. But there was one thing that Luo Ye didn't expect, and that was that this kiss would trigger a conflict in his bloodline. It was a flash of images. There were so many of them that Luo Ye didn't even have time to remember them. At that moment, all the sounds around him disappeared, and Luo Ye's vision seemed to travel back in time hundreds of years ago. It was a man and a woman, a tall woman with reddish-brown hair and a black-haired man with a cold expression. There were many images that flashed past: battles, life, happy chatting, talking with someone with a serious expression, and finally, a parting kiss. Wait, this is... Luo Ye looked at the woman who kissed the man's cheek and waved goodbye with a smile. He suddenly had a strange feeling. It was like Xia Luot, but it wasn't. What was this? While Luo Ye was confused, the man in the image turned his head, and his eyes seemed to pass through the barrier of time and space. Luo Ye saw his face clearly for the first time. It's him. At this moment, Luo Ye's heart surged with stormy waves, but he suddenly felt a little relieved. The next moment, the spirit vision ended, and the cheers in his ears drew Luo Ye back to reality. Oh! The excited and enthusiastic cheers came from the audience, not only from the couple area, but also from the singles area. The desire for love didn't care about nationality. Austinites were also happy to eat melons, not to mention in such an atmosphere. Luo Ye. What was that just now? Well, it's a little messy. Let me calm down first. After the kiss, the two separated and were a little dazed by the excessive amount of information, but this expression meant something else in the eyes of others. Thank you, sir and miss, for your demonstration. Dear Xia. Their love will be guided by fate. Oh! The crowd cheered louder and louder. Some couples in the singles area began to shout, and couples in the couples area also began to show their affection. Only Luo Ye and Xia Luot were silent in the chaotic background, until the middle-aged man's next spoke. Well, you two, you can go to the pavilion. Luo Ye turned her head in surprise and saw the middle-aged man smiling meaningfully. Sir, I wish you an unforgettable night. The pavilion was a general name, and it could be roughly understood as the presidential suite in Luo Ye's previous life. It had to be said that the Milton family was quite good at business operations. Perhaps they had learned a thing or two from their marriage with Sorophia, but they were very good at marketing. For example, this luminous butterfly convention didn't exist a few decades ago. However, as the Milton family continued to build and promote this place, this local tradition of the Austin Empire became more and more famous in Xia. And this pavilion was a product of this situation. It was designed on the highest floor of the Cliff Palace, and it was as magnificent as a palace with a good view. Every year, except for the group of Austin Pure Blood School who had cerebral palsy who entertained themselves, it was the place where couples who hatched head butterflies would stay for the night. With such great luck and blessings, coupled with the fact that they were couples, it was needless to say what they would do in such an environment. But this time, for the newcomers, it was too exciting. You really didn't come here on purpose? No, I didn't. Weren't you there? We left together. I couldn't help it. What could I do in such an atmosphere? On the big bed in the presidential suite, a reddish-brown girl hugged a pillow with half of her face exposed. She looked pitifully at the young man who was eager to explain himself. Her eyes were filled with fear, but occasionally, a hint of expectation flashed in those beautiful pupils of hers. Xia Luot, whose brain was severely congested, didn't know what she was thinking anymore. She felt that Luo Ye seemed to have changed into a different person tonight, and Luo Ye's reaction was basically the same. Chapter 153. Regardless of the world, regardless of the era, the construction of spiritual civilization and self-identity was an important task for every leader. In the Akkad family, their efforts in this field could be traced back to thousands of years ago. An important way for nobles to confirm their identity was through historical inheritance. Therefore, just like any other great noble family, from the moment the family was established, every lord would do their best to leave behind something for their descendants to prove their existence. The most typical example was naturally a portrait. My son knows what I look like, my grandson knows what I look like, but my grandson's grandson might not. This was a very realistic point. Even if it was a long-lived extraordinaire, no one dared to pat their chest and guarantee 100 years of peace, let alone a normal person. Therefore, a portrait was especially important. In order to leave their appearance for their descendants to admire, the head of the Akkad family would usually hire a contemporary master to draw a portrait for them when they were in their 20s or 30s. These portraits were kept in the family's special warehouse, and Luo Ye often looked at them when he was young. Of course, he didn't show any respect at that time, just like any naughty child. Luo Ye was also a beauty pageant master, and had participated in many most beautiful ancestor contests, and one of them left a deep impression on him. It was an ancestor whose name shook the world a few hundred years ago, Vincent Akkad. Vincent's adventure was a family story that Luo Ye often heard when he was young. After he grew up and awakened his bloodline, Luo Ye became even more curious about this ancestor who also awakened his bloodline. Vincent's era was too long ago, and most of the related records were lost. However, Luo Ye clearly remembered his appearance, and that was why he was able to recognize him at the first moment with his spirit vision. I didn't expect the overlord to be him. Luo Ye stared at the sparkling wine in his glass, and listened to the sound of ice cubes hitting the glass when he shook it gently. For a moment, he had a lot of thoughts, and at the same time, he had a bad premonition and great curiosity. Vincent was one of the strongest people in the human world at that time, so how could the organization he joined be an ordinary one? More importantly, if Luo Ye wasn't wrong, Vincent shouldn't be the leader of this organization. He clearly remembered one of the scenes that flashed through his mind. It was a scene of a group of people having a meeting on both sides of the table. At that table, Vincent was not at the head of the table, but rather at the back. Of course, he was still young in that picture. He was around 18 years old, but according to historical records, Vincent was at least at source rank 3 at that time. Level 3 source rank, he couldn't even sit in the front row. This was a bit too terrifying. One had to know that in Xia's current state, there were only a few people who were at source rank 1. Source rank 2 was already considered the peak of combat strength. For example, Prince Vader, whom Luo Ye had met in the past, had the ability to single-handedly control the battlefield even though he was severely injured. This kind of power was enough to lead people to open up new territories in this world. Next was source rank 3. Although it was far from source rank 2, it was more than enough to be a general of a large country. However, this level of combat power was actually not ranked at that table. This meant that the overall strength of this organization was very terrifying. And looking at the situation, the queen of the Sophia dynasty was also a member of this organization. What kind of organization could make Vincent join? The same bloodline made Luoya very curious. If the reason he helped Xia Luo before was for money and strength, then now he really wanted to understand some things. The Akot family's bloodline awakeners were short-lived. Why was this? Did they disappear because of an enemy or an accident? If there was an enemy, then who was the enemy? Countless mysteries rose and fell in the black-haired boy's heart. His worried appearance also attracted the curiosity of the girl on the bed. Luoya. What's wrong with you? You don't look well. Ah, it's nothing. I was just thinking about what happened before. Is it about our ancestors joining the Twilight Sage Association? Luoya, who was deep in thought, suddenly turned his head when he heard Xia Luo's words. He stared at the girl with surprise. The reddish-brown-haired girl was stunned. You know about the organization they joined? Yes, I saw the symbol on their chests in my spirit vision. It was indeed the identity symbol of the Twilight Sage Association. Twilight Sage Association? What's that? Luoya's face twitched when he heard the name of this evil organization. In his previous life, nothing good could come out of Twilight. This was even more so for organizations. 8 out of 10 of them wanted to destroy the world. Could this old ancestor of his be a member of some evil cult? Luoya thought so worriedly. Xia Luo's face was not hazy. She put down the hand holding the pillow slightly to reveal her face. After thinking for a while, she said hesitantly, Actually, I only know the name. As for how I know. You also know that Shiya's intelligence network has the widest coverage in Shiya. Because our family lacks internal strength, we have incorporated many transcendent families in the past 100 years. One of them is the famous assassin family, the Kalesa family, Xia Luo spoke softly. Luoya listened for a while swirling his wine. He finally understood the ins and outs of the matter. At the same time, he also understood something. Chapter 154. When he heard Xia Luo's words, Luoya's entire body trembled. He turned around to look at the beautiful woman on the bed and suddenly felt a warm current flowing through his body. As the saying goes, it is important to know one's own limits. Knowing how to count is a good virtue. But today, at this very moment, Luoya felt that Xia Luo's count was probably failing, similar to the level of failure in his previous life. Dressed like this, sitting on the bed, and saying these words with such an expression, was it an invitation or a seduction? Luoya blushed and glared at Xia Luo. The girl immediately knew that her expression was not right and hurriedly explained. I meant that we need to rest. That's not what I meant. Okay, I'll sleep on the sofa. You sleep early. Luoya's body was hot and dry. He got up and was about to leave the bedroom when he suddenly felt a tug. The youth turned around and saw the red-haired girl tugging at the corner of his clothes. How can we sleep on the sofa? This bed is so wide. It's fine if we each sleep on one side. The red-haired girl said in a low voice. She had never seen anyone sleep on the sofa and didn't think that it could be used as bedding. Moreover, Luoya, whether he was the heir of a marquis or a fiancé, shouldn't sleep on that kind of thing. Of course, these were all external reasons. What really mattered was the girl's heart. There were 2 reasons why he came to see Adelisa today. One was because Xia Luo wanted to repay Luoya for her recent hard work. The other was because Xia Luo wanted to break away from her childhood and no longer be bound by the past. Originally, Xia Luo's heart was filled with disappointment and pain. Even if their relationship was extremely cold, no child would be happy about this kind of thing. When she talked about her past with Luoya, it was actually a kind of self-release for the girl. However, what she didn't expect was that this kind of release aroused Luoya's resentment and sympathy. When the youth hatched the most beautiful butterfly, affirming her journey alone for so many years, something buried deep in the girl's heart began to overflow uncontrollably. That was the loneliness that she had been suppressing for so many years. That was the weakness of a girl who never exposed herself in front of others. When the butterfly spread its wings, Charlotte's heart seemed to be liberated. For a moment, she even felt that Roja was her family. The two of them had been married for so many years and accompanied each other for a long time. Of course, Xia Luo soon woke up, but that feeling lingered in her heart for a long time. If it was before, Xia Luo would never agree to sleep in the same room as Luoya. But now, just sleeping on the sofa made her inexplicably distressed. Xia Luo's feelings were a little out of control. On the other hand, Luoya's biological instincts were about to go out of control. Today, Xia Luo was dressed very boldly, perhaps because she came to see her mother. It was as if she was deliberately going against the Austen conservatives. But no matter what the reason was, there was an unavoidable problem. Xia Luo's current charm was fatal. In order to grab onto the corner of Luoya's clothes, the girl put down the pillow and threw herself forward. At this time, she was kneeling on the bed with all four limbs. Her big emerald eyes were looking at him with a layer of mist. Under her beautiful face and red lips was a chest that had just grown a little but appeared more youthful. The wine was a little to the head. Luoya held the wine glass and tried to find an excuse. The black-haired youth was conceited and had a strong resistance to beauty. In the past 3 years, he had seen the two top beauties, Ai Lizi and Noa Ayer, again and again. But he had never felt this way before. If appearance was the first layer, then the purity, ignorance, and slight fear in the young Miss eyes were the third layer. The natural contrast with her usual intelligence was the fourth layer. And the fifth layer was Xia Luo's origin substance. It was also the greatest temptation that was madly stimulating Luoya's evil desires. The Sorophia race had many people and were based on the 3 origin substances of the human race. But for those with a clear Highland elf bloodline, especially Xia Luo, who had awakened an atavistic bloodline, they had their clan's origin substance. Sorophia's origin substance was loyalty. Just like the other origin substances of the Shia world, Sorophia's origin substance, loyalty, also had a similar promotion method. But because she was a ruler, Sorophia's loyalty was mostly to her family and faith. In this aspect, men naturally referred to their own families. But for women, the word, loyalty, changed with marriage. That's right, most of Sorophia's women chose to be loyal to their own families. In other words, they were loyal to their husbands until death. They were the ultimate nemesis of Taurans. However, just as there were pros and cons to everything, Sorophia's loyalty also had an unknown sadness, and that was the fact that she had entrusted it to the wrong person. This was also the reason why there were so many nobles in Shia, and Sorophia's women were especially miserable when they met with misfortune. Other people's love was continuous and could be interrupted, but Sorophia's love was all in one go. This was also one of the reasons why Xia Luo was afraid of marriage. To a certain extent, it was a path of no return. Luoya completely understood this situation, but at the same time, a kind of instinctive possessiveness was born in him. If he tricked this pitifully naive young lady now, he might be able to obtain a lover who would never leave him after one night. Never leave him. This word seemed to have some kind of magic that made Luoya's brain continue to overheat. In this materialistic and extravagant society where the nobles were used to cheating, a beautiful, noble, and eternally loyal woman was almost every man's dream. At the crucial moment, Luoya, whose face was red from holding back his anger, surged with curses. He raised his hands and cast 2 curses. Cold animal, thinking has been rationally corrected, greatly reducing the influence of various impulses and desires on decision-making. Chapter 155. King Selection. A hoarse yet familiar voice entered Luoya's ears, causing him to be alert and shudder. It also awakened Luoya's consciousness. Shake, the world is shaking. This was what Luoya felt in his half-awake state. Deep fatigue attacked his body, making him feel as if he had run a 40-kilometer marathon. His eyelids were heavy and he could not open them, but his ears were noisy. Shouts, a lot of shouts, and it was very mixed. Most of them were men's voices, followed by the sound of something falling on a wooden board. There were a lot of them, and they were very dense. Then there was the sound of someone stepping on feces. That's right, it was the sound that Luoya heard in TV dramas. Strictly speaking, it was the sound of something sticky stepping on the ground. After that, there was a sound that Luoya was more familiar with. It was the sound of metal clashing, and the sound of swords cutting into flesh. Luoya was familiar with this sound. He had heard it many times in the past, and it came from large-scale multiplayer sports, war. Wait, war? The moment this word flashed in his mind, Luoya opened his eyes abruptly and found that his surroundings were completely dark. What's going on? Luoya was confused and uneasy. He felt the cold ground and wanted to get up, but he did not expect that as soon as he propped himself up, the ground shook, and he fell back down. It was a bad start, but Luoya did not come out of it empty-handed. Darkness, shaking, the sound of something rolling on the ground, the sound of fighting and the sound of waves. Luoya, who had experienced it once, knew what it meant. Of course, more important and straightforward was Luoya's system. Warning, 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 bloodline promotion signs detected, system assistance bloodline promotion activating witness status, exploration and freedom, resistance and sacrifice, they are like rolling waves, never yielding. The cracks in the gem are still there, and the gold is dissipated in the ocean, countdown to witness status end, 119 hours 17 minutes, bloodline promotion rate, 11%, evaluation, low, 6, as expected, I knew it. Roha held his head and looked at the system interface. He had a basic idea. According to the current situation and the description of the system, he could only guess where he was now. Golden Ship Crew. Is it 5 days this time? For this situation, the black-haired youth rubbed his head. In fact, he was happy to see this. After all, Roha had too many questions in his heart. What is the purpose of the Golden Ships and the Sages Society? What was the position of Vincent or the Akkat family in this? Who are the enemies? Who are your friends? These were all questions that Luoya had no clue about and was eager to know the answers to. However, it was worth mentioning that the contents of the system were not limited to these. Pay Tila's blessing, the great being has high hopes for you. Survival is his blessing and your desire. All attributes will be strengthened within 3 minutes. The degree of strengthening depends on the nature of the curse power. Remaining uses, 1. Chapter 156. How strong was Luoya? This was a question that not many people, or perhaps almost no one, knew. Whether it was Ai Lizzie, Kadia, or Anna, none of the people in the Akkat family who were close to Luoya had actually seen him in action. The heavy protection made Xia Luot misjudge Luoya's strength. After all, in her eyes, Luoya was a scholar. However, in reality, as the contractor of the Gulan Daer, under the 2 years of the giant's guidance, Luoya was no longer the same as before. Putting aside the fact that he was at the peak of source level 5 for now, just the exclusive bonus of the crown made Luoya stronger than other people of the same level. His curse power was more condensed, and its speed was faster. Of course, the most important thing was the special characteristic of the crown. Glory Return, the warrior who has returned from the ancient times, the power that has disappeared for a long time has finally returned to its homeland. That's right. Under the unique ability of the crown, Glory Return, Luoya could use the power of the ancient existence that he had signed a contract with to a certain extent. The Gulan Daer's strength, and some undead skills were the source of the crown. As the saying goes, a strong man can defeat 10 skilled men. The strength attribute had always been a hard currency in actual combat, and this powerful strength combined with Luo Ye's own curse power formed a set of powerful system. If the monster under his feet was classified according to the strength of a human, it was probably at source level 5, but in reality, it was smashed into meat paste in a single blow. I can probably protect myself, and as your fiancé and the one who opened this historical fragment, I have the responsibility to protect you. Sorry, I don't accept any rebuttal, and we don't have time to discuss these things now. This monster should be a scaly man. This ship was attacked by the sea folk, and the battle situation doesn't seem to be right. Luo Ye stretched out his hand to stop the girl's words. He looked up at the figures flashing back and forth in the hole above the deck. He quickly gathered information and urgently made a rough judgment of the battle situation. Based on common sense, the allies were undoubtedly the humans on the ship, and the enemies were the invading sea folk. Just now, he saw 7 humanoid creatures passing by above, only 2 of them were humans, and there were fewer humans who could understand the shouts. Looking at it all, fuck, we're going to lose. When this thought flashed through his mind, Luo Ye's heart could be said to sink to the bottom. Even fools knew that this was the sea folk. Once this ship was captured, he and Xia Luot would almost certainly die. Hurry! While the humans are still alive, we must protect this ship. In the deafening battle cries, Luo Ye's expression changed as he shouted at Xia Luot. Then, he stepped on the rotten wood and rushed up to the hole above. The girl, who also understood that this was a critical moment, followed closely behind. During the process of climbing, the light above continued to expand in their eyes. Finally, after a bright light, it turned into a vast sea and sky background. At the moment when they saw the scene outside, the 2 people who rushed out of the hole could not help but be stunned. Their bodies stiffened, and their hearts were greatly shocked. It was a huge fleet sailing on the sea with huge waves, fighting with countless monsters. On the high-pole giant ship, there were people coming and going. Humans were holding swords in their hands and shouting to kill. In the sea, the heads of the monsters swarmed up along the hull of the ship. Their dim yellow eyes were filled with coldness. The sea monsters stretched out their tower-like tentacles and wrapped around the warships. Deep and strange cries that made one's scalp numb came from the deep sea. On the opposite side of the warships, powerful magic fluctuations turned into laser-like shots that shot into the sea. The power was so great that it could set off huge waves. The roars of the humans, the strange cries of the monsters, the roars of the cannons, and the miserable screams of the injured sea monsters. Countless noises rushed into one's ears. It made one's scalp numb, and there was a storm in one's heart. Luo Ye looked at the scene that resembled a mythical battlefield in a daze for a moment. However, he quickly reacted and looked around. At the same time, Xia Luo's voice sounded. Be careful. The girl warned loudly. The next moment, 2 monsters covered in scales rushed towards them. Luo Ye narrowed his eyes and immediately activated Bloody Disaster, after sensing the murderous intent. The dark red color and the 2 names that were completely garbled allowed Luo Ye to confirm the identity of the enemies. However, this time, the one who made the first move was Xia Luot. Gem Trigger. The girl with brownish-red hair stroked the ring on her hand. The next moment, the bright and exquisite ring suddenly emitted light and began to extend. It finally turned into a beautiful pistol-like curse vessel. It was a dreamlike work of art composed of precious metals and minerals. The cartridge that resembled a revolver wasn't filled with ammunition, but with colorful gems. When the sun shone, a bright light flickered in Charlotte's hand, but outsiders didn't know that the light was the blessing of the Grim Reaper. Gem Trigger. This was the legendary curse vessel of the Sorophia family. Just like the short blade of the Holy One to the Theocracy, the Gem Trigger was also a great creation passed down from ancient times. It was the heritage of the Highland Elves. It was a universal trigger that could launch all curses. Ruby, reload. The girl with brownish-red hair reached out and raised the curse vessel. She didn't aim, but she pointed in one direction with an indifferent expression. The next moment, her white finger gently tapped the trigger. The crisp sound was pleasant to the ears. Caw! Chapter 157. Captain Jeff felt that this might be the last day of his life. Jeff was 50 years old this year. He wasn't tall, and his appearance wasn't anything special. His gray hair carried the vicissitudes of life, and he wore a simple sailor outfit. He didn't look too different from any other crew member who mopped the deck. However, even though he looked ordinary, this middle-aged man was actually an expert whose strength had reached Origin Grade 3. The Golden Fleet was the name of the Kingdom of Sophia's army. It was a huge fleet that had already pacified the sea before the humans had even pacified the land. The ships were divided into 3 classes. As the captain of the first-class vice flagship, St. Paul, Jeff's strength was well known. However, he felt that he was powerless now. The deep-sea scaly people were the archenemies of the Golden Fleet. As an opponent, they had ample experience in dealing with the Golden Fleet. However, due to the previous civil war, part of the St. Paul's functions had been damaged, causing the vice-captain of the St. Paul's to be seriously injured. On the Golden Fleet's warships, if the captain was injured, it would affect the morale. However, as long as he didn't die, it wouldn't be a big problem. However, the 2 vice-captains were very precious. The vice-captains of the Golden Fleet all had the blood of the Highland Elves. They might not be strong, but they were the key to many curse devices on the warship. The reason why the Golden Fleet was so powerful was that it used a lot of the lost technology of the Highland Elves. These things required the blood of the Sophia family to be activated. It could be said that the vice-captain of each ship was a strategic resource. A golden warship that was manned and an unmanned golden warship were 2 completely different things. Usually, the vice-captain's control room was very safe. However, during the Civil War, one of the vice-captains defected to the rebels. The St. Paul's warship was hit by a curse bomb during the battle with the rebels, causing the protection of the control room to be greatly damaged. Although they won that battle, no one would have thought that this small after-effect would bring disaster to everyone. Die! A heavy punch with a dragon-like curse power smashed the chest of a giant scaly person. Jeff's eyes widened in anger as he roared and directly tore the general of the 3rd source-rank scaly person in front of him in half. Flesh and blood splattered like rain. The middle-aged man whose body was dyed red looked at the shocked expression of the scaly person before he died and shook his head. I can't fight in the water. You can't fight on land. Thinking of this, Jeff exhaled and reached out his hand to cover the bloody hole in his abdomen. He turned his head to look at the people around him. How is Vice-Captain Ravel? Captain. I'm afraid Vice-Captain Raway won't make it. When the ship doctor covered in blood spoke these words, the expressions of everyone nearby changed. An indescribable silence abruptly appeared in this battlefield filled with war cries that shook the heavens. Vice-Captain Ravel was dying, which meant that the golden battleship would stop operating. Now, there were many curse vessels protecting everyone. Soon, the electric net outside the hull would disappear. At that time, everyone would no longer face the elite army of the scaled people, but countless monsters as vast as the sea. How long can the power grid last? About 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Jeff muttered to himself as he looked at the horde of scaly people and the sailors who were fighting in front of him. As a person who had been on the sea for half his life, he was already prepared for it, but it was a pity that so many young people had died. A strong sense of sorrow rose in the middle-aged man's heart. He quickly walked to the front of the young man who had fallen to the ground and bent over to look at his pale face. Ravel, can you hold on for another 10 minutes? Brothers, let's drag a few of them down with us. At that time, you will activate the central golden soul, bring the big guys outside, and let's go together. The young man, whose chest and abdomen had been cut open and whose consciousness had begun to blur, widened his eyes slightly. At this moment, the young man who was on the verge of death seemed to have regained his consciousness. He smiled with a little pride and made a promise softly, all right. Leave it to me, Captain. Good job. Looking at the young man who was dedicated to his duty at the last moment, Jeff grinned. He raised his head and looked around. All he saw were calm faces. Those were the warriors who buried their fear in the bottom of their hearts and faced death with equanimity. Sorry, everyone. What does the dog trader and the fish cub have to do with you, Captain? It's the last battle, the shield is yours. The warriors chuckled, stood up and walked to the front line under Jeff's leadership. The old captain reached out and wiped his eyes, burying the last sadness in his heart. Next, it was a desperate charge. Killing more enemies and reducing the pressure on their allies was the last thing they could do. The sailors drew their swords and axes, but before the final battle began, the uproar at the front line had rushed into their ears. Captain! Who's that? The sailors next to him exclaimed and pointed to the front. Jeff wiped his hands and looked forward, and his eyes widened suddenly. Chapter 158. Roars, explosions, the monster's screams, and the boy's warm breath. These were all Xia Luot felt at this moment. Although they were in the middle of a battle, such a close posture still made the girl's heart flutter. But soon, Xia Luot came back to her senses. The huge commotion caused the two sides to stop fighting. Xia Luot leaned in Luoya's arms and opened her eyes. She found that the curse power in front of her had almost disappeared. Seeing such a good opportunity, the girl's eyes widened. She decisively moved the trigger, but this time, she aimed at the boy in her arms. Xia Luot. Trust me. Luoya, who was shocked, looked into the girl's eyes and nodded involuntarily. As the girl assured him, the trigger was pulled and a magnificent white light flashed. Luoya's vision was filled with light at this moment. When he could see clearly again, the surrounding scenery had completely changed. He looked around and saw the sailors who were equally confused. This child isn't the one just now. How did she get here? Before the sailors finished speaking, the trigger was pulled again in the distance. Suddenly, a figure flashed above Luoya. Xia Luot descended from the sky and slapped Luoya, who was about to get up, back onto the floor. Puff! Cough, cough! Xia Luot's good figure made a contribution at this moment. Luoya, who had the air in his lungs squeezed, was fine after coughing twice. Before the two boys and girls who had reunited could celebrate, the sailors rushed over, giving Luoya a fright. Wait, you don't have to say, we understand. What's going on? What do you understand? Luoya, who was anxious to clarify his position, was stunned when he saw the sailors rushing over turn around and protect the two of them with their weapons. They looked even more anxious than Luoya. Child, do you know how to sail? Huh? Captain Jeff's eyes lit up as he asked Xia Luot who was behind Luoya. The girl couldn't help but be stunned. Seeing this, Jeff suddenly understood and hurriedly pointed at the ship's doctor and yelled. Quick! Keep Royai alive for me. At the very least, we should teach this child the electric fence. Whether we can survive or not depends on this. The captain explained the situation in a few words. Luoya, who heard that the battleship was about to self-destruct, was dumbfounded. Xia Luot hurried to the side of the dying vice-captain and began to concentrate on learning the basic operations of this behemoth. Fuck. Learning how to operate a warship now? Are you fucking kidding me? Luoya couldn't fully accept the situation until now. He couldn't understand why there was such a job. Although Xia Luot was talented and intelligent, that was business. This was not the same as engineering, right? Although he was cursing wildly in his heart, reality was still reality. The battle cries continued, and people or monsters fell every second. Luo Ye looked at the battlefield filled with battle cries and gritted his teeth. He grabbed a sword from the ground and rushed forward. Captain Jeff, can we only survive if Xia Luo activates that electric fence? That's too risky. Is there no other way? There is, but it's impossible, unless we can drive all the fish on the deck down and occupy the ship's railing. The gray-haired captain stretched his hand forward and deflected all the high-pressure water arrows shot by the scaly men. He naturally knew that the success rate on Xia Luo's side was not high, but compared to taking back the ship's railing, the girl's side had a higher chance. It was obvious that if the crew was strong enough to drive the enemy off, the St. Paul wouldn't be in such a situation now. Whether it was impact or explosive power, the sailors who had been fighting for a long time no longer had it. Is it impossible? That's not necessarily true. The black-haired young man muttered to himself. He stroked his long sword as if he was sharpening the dazzling cold blade. A red light flashed in his golden eyes, and the remaining curse power burst out like a python, turning into red thunder roaring in the air. Boom! The scattered and exploding lightning was like knives and swords, and within the rolling thunder, there seemed to be countless warriors roaring and roaring. The powerful presence attracted the attention of all the sailors. Jeff's eyes widened. He never thought that in such a desperate situation, there would be one miracle after another. The group skill was a legendary ability in Shiya's chaotic country. It was said that the person who had it would be chosen by the heavens and be born as a king. In the eyes of the crowd, the young man covered in thunder and lightning was angry but indifferent as ice. The red thunder crown crowned him. At this moment, he seemed to see the proud prince in the palace of the holy capital, turning his face to him under the rainy night and showing him an unruly smile. Chapter 159. What was the most handsome thing in a man's fantasy? Luo Ye didn't know about other people, but in his mind, there were only two things. Cannons. Giant ships. Then there was the sea of stars, dreams, and faraway places. Oh, oh, oh. Fuck them. The cheers of the crowd were deafening, like a match that ignited the dreams of the black-haired youth buried in his previous life. The caliber was justice, and the range was truth. Luo Ye, senior disciple of the Cannon Tower Church, joined the battle. Luo Ye, who was quickly infected by the atmosphere, shouted with the crowd. Captain Jeff saw this and laughed loudly. He was very familiar with this reaction. Every young person who saw the main cannons of the Golden Ship Regiment for the first time would fall into this fanaticism. Some people would even worship the cannon at the bow of the ship. The enemies in the sea where the giant octopus monster was located had been annihilated by the Golden Ship Regiment. This powerful attack had completely changed the situation of the battle. Without the octopus monster, the sea folk had lost the means to directly threaten the ship. They had no choice but to retreat. The monsters in the sea dived into the depths of the sea and disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, the crew sighed in relief. The joy of surviving a life-and-death situation made everyone lose control. They all laughed and shouted as if they were venting their emotions. Xia Luo, you're a genius. In the midst of the uproar of the crowd, Luo Ye rushed to the red-haired girl and gave her a big hug. In the face of Luo Ye's excited and unhesitant intimate action, Xia Luo couldn't be as calm as he was during the battle. You, what are you doing? Let go. The girl, who was originally exhausted due to the overdraft of her curse power, suddenly felt her body temperature rise in the boy's arms. Her face was red, but she weakly patted Luo Ye's back. However, this slight resistance had no effect. It didn't even attract Luo Ye's attention. After a round of close contact, the boy looked at his system and checked the evaluation. Evaluation, average, 56, sure enough. The damage of the allies this time was also counted in the evaluation. Luo Ye looked at the evaluation that rose to 56 points and was very excited. Last time in the historical fragment, Luo Ye had to personally fight with the talents for the evaluation. How could it be as good as bringing people to fight together with him now? And from the perspective of survival, it was a great thing to have allies around him. The black-haired boy was happy while thinking about the reason. He felt that this should be because this battle was a battle between humans and foreign races, so he could gain so much when he led the humans' counterattack. You're too close. Ah, sorry. Charlotte's voice was like a mosquito's protest. The youth recovered and hurriedly separated. Roja let go of her hand and looked at the girl with tears in her eyes. Charlotte bit her lips and stared at him. This was the first time she scolded him since the butterfly incident. Stupid. Idiot. Unbelievable. I was wrong. I was just a little excited when I saw how good your cannon skills were. Luoya was embarrassed as he muttered to himself. At the same time, the doubts in his heart grew stronger. He could not figure out how Xia Luo learned how to pilot such a super battleship in such a short time. However, this was not the main point now. Oh, is that so? Don't think that I didn't see what you did. You didn't believe that I could succeed at all and rushed out yourself, right? Ha ha ha, this, the black-haired boy looked away guiltily when his thoughts were exposed. Xia Luo saw this and glared at him fiercely. The girl recalled how Luoya looked when he led all the humans to charge. Her heart was in turmoil. Even now, she could not calm down. Xia Luo had never seen the boy at that time. In her impression, Luoya was more like a bookish businessman. However, at that moment, Xia Luo saw the shadow of a hero in him. Heroes could make any girl's heart flutter. That was why there were many beauties around heroes since ancient times. Xia Luo was no exception. However, other than her heart fluttering, the girl also had an unknown worry in her heart. Why did he rush so far forward? What if he was injured? What if he was hit by a water arrow? Why was a level 5 source ranker at the front while Captain Jeff, a level 3 source ranker, followed behind him? Looking at her companion who was in the limelight, not only was he not happy, but he was worried. This was the first time Xia Luo experienced this feeling. She did not know why. She only knew that it was a great test for her heart. She did not want to experience it a second time. I am afraid that Mr. Deputy Captain's injuries are serious and can't hold on until I teach you the technique. It's double insurance, ha. Humph, clumsy lie. I can't be bothered with you. Xia Luo waved her hand and the battleship began to leave the battle area in the same direction according to the instructions broadcast to the entire ship. Once they left the battle area, it also meant that this encounter was completely over. Chapter 160. Vincent. You are one of Vincent's men. In front of the St. Paul's captain's room, a tall brown-haired beauty looked at the black-haired, golden-eyed young man in astonishment. What's going on? The flood has washed over the Dragon King's temple. Family? Wait, that's not right. Vincent is only 20 this year. Why haven't I heard that he has a younger brother? Furthermore, if you are a member of the Akot family, you shouldn't have come. I have already sent a letter to Vincent. There is no need for him to send anyone else. Your Majesty, are you referring to the letter that states that you will arrive at the Twin Horns port in the middle of April? You have seen the letter. Of course. In order to help you get through this difficult time, the necessary information is necessary. The head of the family has already shown me the letter. Under the astonished gaze of Isabella, Luoya reached into his pocket with a calm expression and took out a golden sealed letter. Then, he transformed on the spot. Your Majesty the Queen, this is a keepsake that my brother gave me before I came here. However, due to the fact that the Twilight Sage Association's delivery involves the attributes of space and time, this letter is as fragile as if it has been placed there for hundreds of years. Please be careful. As Luoya spoke, he passed the letter to Isabella with both hands. Looking at the woman, his eyes were filled with smiles and friendliness, as though he already knew of the relationship between her and his brother. The brown-haired queen was taken aback. She hesitated for a moment before accepting the letter. Why is this fellow so good at deceiving others? Behind Luoya, the brown-haired young lady was trying her best to control her facial expression. She was speechless to the extreme. She was impressed by the young man's ability to link everything together and treat it as a stitched monster. This fellow. It is fortunate that I was prepared. Otherwise, I might have been deceived by him as well. The young mistress was unconsciously rejoicing. On the other hand, the queen caressed the familiar letter and observed the brittle paper in astonishment. Just as the saying goes, no matter how one tries to hide it, the traces of time cannot be erased. Buckwheat paper is tough and durable. It would probably take hundreds of years for the paper to become so brittle. I didn't expect such a thing to happen. Was it a scholar who sent you here? Isabela's doubts were mostly eliminated by the evidence, but she still didn't completely let down her guard. Faced with a new problem, Luoya pondered for a moment and shook her head. My apologies, Your Majesty. Although I know that the ones who sent us here are the members of the Twilight Sage Association, I am not one of them. I have only heard about them from my elder brother. Thus, I do not know who they are. What does he look like? I'm not sure. In fact, we can only see a blurry figure. In the face of Her Majesty's interrogation, Luoya answered with a troubled expression. However, not only did this "I don't know" answer not arouse Isabela's suspicion, but it also made her completely believe in Luoya. The Dusk Sages Association was an organization where all the powerful individuals in the world were united for a common goal. As outstanding individuals or even rulers of various domains, the members of the Dusk Sages Association were likely to have grudges against each other. In order to not affect their work efficiency, none of the members of the Dusk Sages Association showed themselves. Even their voices were masked. Scholar was a senior member of the Twilight Sage Association. Her supernatural powers were outstanding, but she was also extremely cautious. If Luoya revealed her appearance, Isabela would probably start a war without hesitation. Luoya's suspicions were basically eliminated. Isabela then turned her gaze to Xia Luot, whose hair color was similar to hers. The black-haired young man's heart skipped a beat when he saw this, but he didn't expect that. Xia Luot was even better at acting than him. Realizing that Isabela was looking at her, Xia Luot paused for a moment. The next moment, tears suddenly welled up in her eyes. The reddish-brown-haired young woman trembled as she stretched out her arm and opened her palm. In the center of her palm, a sparkling gemstone trigger was placed flat on her palm, shining brightly. This is my keepsake, Your Majesty Isabela. Please help the Sorofia family on account of our relationship as fellow humans. What? Faced with the crying young woman and all sorts of information, Isabela was rather confused. Xia Luot sobbed as she told the story to the queen's astonished and confused gaze. It was 200 years ago when the Sorofia family broke away from the human army and migrated to the south. Some of the weaker members of the Sorofia family fell behind and didn't manage to catch up in time. As a result, they were captured by the Austin Empire and forced to join the empire. They were then assigned to be under the rule of the Milton family. The Highland elf bloodline was naturally sensitive to money. The Milton family took advantage of this to force the Sorofia family to do business in order to earn money. However, due to historical reasons, the Sorofia family was discriminated against as traitors and lived in persecution and suffering. Family curses and bloodline curses were continuously broken for more than 200 years, causing the Sorofia family to be unable to fight back. The current head of the Sorofia family, Bruce, was deeply worried about this. However, he accidentally heard about the existence of the Sorofia kingdom from the Akkad family. For the future of the Sorofia family, he ordered his daughter, Xia Luot, to bring the family's only ancestral secret treasure, the stone trigger, as a keepsake and ask for help from the Sorophia royal family. As this mission required a Highland elf bloodline holder, Xia Luot volunteered herself. With the combination of the two, she was finally qualified to follow Luo Ye and be sent here by the curses. She also succeeded in meeting her own people. Xia Luot told the story with tears in her eyes. Her sincere complaints attracted the attention of everyone nearby. Not to mention Isabella, if it wasn't for the fact that Luo Ye knew about Xia Luot's background, even Luo Ye would have believed her. How could this person be so good at lying? Luo Ye looked at the crying young woman and sighed in her heart, the same as what Xia Luot had 5 minutes ago. However, she had to admit that the duet of this unscrupulous fiancé couple was indeed effective. I didn't expect that the people who were separated back then actually survived. Chapter 161. What was the background of Vincent and Isabella's era? Luo Ye didn't have time to flip through the book because he entered the historical period too suddenly. But with his excellent memory of historical records, he could vaguely recall the general trajectory of Vincent's life. It was the 261st year of the Third Era. This year was a familiar year in the eyes of future historians because this was the period of the First War of the Mutated Species. In the eyes of the later generations, this period of time was terrifying and dark. Everyone who read history books focused their attention on the eastern region and the subsequent large-scale human battles. No one cared about the kingdom of Sophia in the distant south. In the subsequent wars, human literature was destroyed by the flames of war. Not even 1 out of 10 remained. This could be said to be the reason why there were almost no records of the kingdom of Sophia in the future. But today, Luo Ye learned something else and discovered that the kingdom of Sophia, or at least Queen Isabella, didn't seem to be so far away from the world and enjoyed a paradise alone. 6 disasters. Sister Isabella, what is that? Oh, Vincent didn't tell you, right? Well, he's very tight-lipped. The brown-haired woman listened to Xia Luot's question and said so. Then she looked at the 2 people in front of her and smiled helplessly. Actually, in theory, I should keep it a secret, but because of our race, everyone on the ship basically already knows, so I'm too lazy to keep it a secret. Luo Ye, you have already read the letter before, right? Aren't you curious about what the egg is? Wait, don't tell me. That's right, the golden ship received a commission from the Sage Society to transport the 6 disasters egg. The brown-haired queen said so. She turned her head and looked at the white sail outside the window. She raised her hand and took a sip of wine. After pondering for a long time, she suddenly asked a question in a heavy voice. You too, do you believe in fate? Fate? Hearing Isabella's question that came out of nowhere, Luo Ye and Xia Luot were both stunned. The black-haired boy was hesitant about this mysterious question. The girl who had more right to speak thought for a while and slowly said. The scope of fate is too broad. It has different meanings depending on the target. What kind of fate do you mean by fate? What kind of fate? If I have to say, it's humans. Huh? Isabella's answer made Xia Luot's eyes widened in confusion. Luo Ye was also confused and couldn't help but complain in his heart. What's going on? Fate can't satisfy you two anymore. Is the prophecy of the apocalypse? Luo Ye's face twitched when he thought of a long series of numbers such as 1999, 2012. He suddenly felt that Isabella's words were a little unreliable. Although the Highland elves were good at divination and were rumored to be able to observe fate, in fact, it was difficult to accurately observe the fate of a single person in this world with extraordinary power, let alone the fate of the entire human race. In the end, fate was like a thread. The most terrible thing was variables. The fate of the entire human race was too many variables. It was impossible to control it. Wouldn't the result be a fantasy? Luo Ye complained in his heart. Xia Luot, who knew the industry, was also puzzled. Isabella looked at the two who wanted to say something but didn't care. She shook her wine glass and asked the second question. It has been more than 200 years since we moved to the New World from the West. The current human world has just recovered from the disaster. A new world is being developed and a new order is being established. The great catastrophe at the end of the Second Age was ultimately defeated by the tenacity of the human race. But have you ever thought about one thing? In the distant past, in the ancient times that can only be glimpsed from myths and legends, where did the powerful civilizations with extraordinary power go? Huh? This. Isabela's words made Luoya and Xia Luot speechless. Indeed, the existing human families with ancient bloodlines were quite powerful. People like Heathcliff could even lead and establish a country. Then, the question was, where were the real angels? It wasn't just the angels. Putting aside the giants, who were obviously barbaric races, the Highland elves had many unique spells and technology. These pioneers established a brilliant civilization far before the human race. But where did they go now? Without a doubt, Luoya and Xia Luot couldn't answer this question. Perhaps no one could. Isabela obviously didn't want to ask them for the answer to this eternal mystery. She just took a sip of wine and told them some of the facts she knew. Destroyed, all destroyed. Those once glorious civilizations collapsed in the long river of time. There are many reasons, such as war, disease, environmental changes, and man-made disasters. Civilization is a very interesting thing. It can be very strong sometimes, but it can be very fragile sometimes. Fate is a fair thing sometimes. No matter if it's an extraordinary race or a human, no matter if it's strong or weak, the future is unpredictable. It's just that, the scales of fate will occasionally be moved by some dark hands. Isabela looked at the two children opposite her and revealed a fact in a calm voice. Some civilizations were destroyed, and what killed them was the 6 disasters left behind by Mother Goddess. Destroyed? Mother Goddess? Chapter 162. Bloodline Reconstruction. What the hell was that? And what exactly was the crown stone? Luoya was dumbfounded as he looked at the inexplicable notifications in the system. He had never thought that this disaster, which was related to the rise and fall of human civilization, would have something to do with his bloodline. Ding! Bloodline reconstruction successful. Detected crown stone variant. Initiating preliminary evaluation. System evaluation, absorbable. Recommended absorption level, based on the host's specific situation, the variant's growth rate will be evaluated. Recommended absorption level, B+, warning. Warning. The host's level is not up to standard. There is a certain risk in absorbing. The system has activated partial absorption support. Estimated cost, 300,000 gold coins. Due to the host's insufficient balance, the system has activated the loan function. Not the first loan. Interest rate, 10% per month. With a 10% monthly interest rate, you will be able to borrow 300,000 gold coins. Yes/no, Luoya was dazzled by the long string of data. Countless thoughts began to appear in his mind, but there was only one word that stood out the most. Loan. Another loan. When he saw that the system had started to run out of money again, Luoya felt that something was wrong. He didn't think that it would actually give him a loan, and the interest rate. 10% per month. 30,000 gold coins in a month. Even robbing people wouldn't be that fast, right? What kind of operation was this? I'm borrowing money from myself. Isn't the interest rate too high? My territory's capital probably won't be able to support this kind of interest. The cost is equal to the benefits. The probability of the crown stone appearing is extremely low, so this opportunity cannot be missed. Successfully absorbing it will greatly increase the host's strength, but powerful skills have a certain degree of side effects. Please make your choice. The system's words made Luoya grit his teeth and fall silent. There was no doubt that this loan and the price he would have to pay would be enormous, but just as the system said, this was also a great opportunity. Frozen Earth Creator. Although Luoya didn't know the relationship between this terrifying monster and the crown, origin substance, he didn't need to think to know that this civilization destroyer's power was shocking. Come to think of it, although the French system's replies were infuriating, it had only allowed Luoya to take out a loan once. That time, it was the awakening of his bloodline, which almost changed Luoya's life. Then, this time, Luoya's expression changed. He turned his head and looked at the girl who was talking to Isabella. The uneasiness in his heart made him frown. Luoya felt guilty that he had involved Xia Luod in this historical episode. Originally, with his current strength and skills, Luoya felt that he had the ability to protect the girl. However, after hearing Isabella's words and seeing the Frozen Earth Creator, Luoya wasn't so sure anymore. Because he came from the future, he knew that Twin Horn Harbor was frozen. In this era, Twin Horn Harbor was still a good harbor. However, in the future, it would become a cursed harbor that would freeze forever. Countless explorers would be forever buried in that terrifying world of ice and snow, leaving behind only cursed legends. Chapter 163. Inside the cabin, the crisp sound of gemstone triggers rang out continuously. The shattered gemstones turned into golden dust that hit Luoya's body and gradually dissipated. Xia Luod's frozen earthmaker's surroundings had turned into a sea of fire under the bombardment of gemstones. Layers of heat waves slightly recovered Luoya's condition, but these flames only lasted for a moment and extinguished themselves a few seconds later. The flames of the curse power were like candles in the wind under the even stronger chill power of the curse power. However, Milady didn't care about this at all. More than a dozen gemstones were enough to warm Luoya up a little. Her real trump card wasn't here. Boil. Seal. The reddish-brown-haired girl's emerald eyes glowed brightly. Her bloodline surged as she pointed the trigger forward. Her majestic aura was like that of a queen commanding thousands of troops. Under Xia Luod's command, the golden liquid metal soldiers responded. Buzz. Violent buzzing and vibrations began to emanate from the hull of the ship. The golden liquid army rushed out of the crisscrossing pipes and charged towards the ice. The sailors on the ship looked at each other, not knowing what was going on. At the same time, Isabella also made her move. I see. Is this the power of the Akot family's bloodline? It's amazing. No wonder the Sage Society sent you here. Then, let me, your elder sister, help you a little. Milady Queen looked at the boy and girl below. The last doubt in her heart was completely eliminated. She laughed heartily, and the statue of the goddess of fate that Luoya was familiar with suddenly appeared behind her. The only difference was that the golden statue of Isabella was much clearer. Scales of fate. The beautiful and heroic woman shouted. The golden statue then stretched out the hand holding the scales. At the same time, a stack of chips condensed from golden light appeared in Isabella's hand. Xia Luod, watch carefully. This is the true way to use our bloodline. We are not the ones who obey fate, but the ones who change it. These are the chips condensed from the fate of our lives. Family, friends, subordinates of the kingdom, all glory and shame, glory and destruction, all are in these 10 chips. With these chips as the wager, we will pry fate. Isabella looked down at the two from above. At this time, stars were circling above the cabin. The statue of the goddess of fate stretched out her arms, and images appeared on both sides of the scales. One was a boy with black hair and golden eyes. The other was an embryonic ice monster. Between the two sides, the balance went up and down and finally stopped at the position of the ice monster. Isabella saw this and smiled slightly. If it's only this small difference, then one will be enough. Fate chips, place your bets. Roger that. Isabella flicked her finger, and a golden chip jumped and smashed into Luoya's side. The next moment, the golden statue's mechanical voice sounded, and the scales suddenly tilted. The statue of the goddess of fate released a golden light. The ice monster seemed to be cursed by this light, and its strength was greatly reduced. In just a few seconds, there were only a few white streams of air surrounding it. Luoya felt a strange power descending on him, as if fate was on his side. The boy finally understood why the system had such a high success rate. 10, 9, 8. Under the protection of this bloodline skill and his fiancée's gemstone behind him, Luoya finally finished absorbing the cold air around him. The moment the white streams of air were completely pulled over, the system prompt sounded. Ding! Partial absorption successful, acquired skill, touch of frozen earth. Ah, I finally succeeded. Under the double attack of capitalism and feudal superstition, the ancient monster finally lowered its head. Luoya saw this and breathed a sigh of relief. 300,000 yuan, not a waste. The boy smiled stiffly. The next moment, his vision turned black and he fainted. At midnight, under the pale moonlight, a fleet was anchored in the sea where the Golden Fleet once fought. Small boats circled the sea area mixed with the golden liquid to collect samples. On the bow of the ship, a group of believers in white robes was praying to the moonlight under the leadership of an old man. The whole fleet was silent and strange. Across the entire fleet, such a scene was happening at every bow. Chapter 164. In the dark valley, Luoya stared blankly at the distant mountains that seemed like an iron curtain. In front of him, the blonde woman on the throne appeared from the darkness. Her exquisite figure was covered in an ancient robe, and her blonde hair emitted a faint golden light in the darkness. We meet again. It seems that you have successfully survived the crisis, but I didn't expect that you didn't use my blessing. Should I praise you for this? Or did you do it on purpose? On purpose? What do you mean? Fear, worry. These are the emotions that humans naturally have towards us. To a certain extent, powerful beings are connected with fear. Being afraid of being interfered with and controlled is an instinct of living beings. Under the dark mountain range, the sunlight was dim. Luoya looked back at the blonde woman's eyes that were emitting light. He remained silent for a long time about her speculation and observation. I'm not on guard against you. In the end, rather than saying that I don't want to use your skill, it's better to say that I don't want to use it. Don't want to use it? The black-haired boy lowered his head slightly, as if thinking about something. Under Pei Tila's gaze, he said faintly, I have a premonition that danger is approaching. It's just that the previous small skirmishes are far from the time to reveal my trump card. The strongest power is used in the most dangerous moment. This has always been my principle. Oh. I didn't expect that you would cherish my blessings so much. To be honest, hearing you say that makes me feel good. Indeed, cherishing my blessing is respect for me. It's good to know how to respect. Pei Tila raised the corner of her mouth, and a smile appeared on her beautiful face. However, she also had some doubts. But to be honest, the difference between your true self and your age is quite big. True self? That's right. This space is my world. Even if you can come in, you can't deceive me here. The you here is the real you without any disguise. So it's like that. No wonder I keep having a strange feeling. Luoya nodded. He finally understood why he felt unnatural after coming here. The blonde woman leaned on the throne and looked at the boy. The light in her eyes intensified. No matter what, since you fulfilled the first promise and met me again, I should show you some sincerity. Pei Tila's vertical pupils shone brightly. She stared at the black-haired youth and locked eyes with him. At this moment, Luoya felt his eyes burning and couldn't help but narrow them. What did you do? Hee, it's just a small gift. You'll notice it when the skill is activated. Pei Tila smiled as she looked at Luoya. She seemed to be staring at something far away. After a long while, she opened her red lips as if she had thought of something. By the way, I heard that guy say that he wants to ask questions, right? That guy. It's that noisy giant outside. What a troublesome fellow. Gulandair. The black-haired boy's eyes widened. Pei Tila nodded her head. She rested her chin on her hand and looked at Luoya with a smile. She was obviously very interested in him. That's him. He was very angry because he couldn't enter this place. He even threatened me not to have any ideas. There's actually such a thing. You guys can contact each other. Of course, but you're still the bridge of communication. But I'm really surprised. You can actually make that kind of existence care about you. How did you do it? Pei Tila curiously looked down at the boy who was happily thinking about his companions. Luoya was stunned. He thought for a while and smiled. Because we're friends. Friends? The blonde woman widened her eyes at Luoya's words. After blinking her beautiful eyes, Pei Tila suddenly laughed. You can actually become friends with that kind of guy. Ha ha ha, little guy, you're really interesting. Chapter 165. In the cabin, when Isabela's words reached Xia Luo's ears, the reddish-brown-haired girl's body stiffened. Sister Isabela. What did you say? You didn't hear me clearly. Seriously, we don't have much time to waste now. The brown-haired woman frowned when she saw Luoya's condition. She pushed Xia Luo to the bed despite the cold air. Her Majesty Queen tried her best to maintain her composure. She pointed at the black-haired boy's lips and said, "Kiss him." Now. No, why do you have to do this? Xia Luo's body flashed with light as she maintained Luoya's state. However, her face instantly flushed red. Her mind was filled with question marks as she looked at her sister behind her. Isabela was helpless when she saw her sister's innocent look. Her Majesty Queen looked at her younger sister and couldn't help but worry. Xia Luo was perfect in her eyes. She was beautiful, kind-hearted, and a good child. She was also extremely talented. Even Isabela didn't dare to say that she was better than her. However, there was one thing that made Her Majesty Queen speechless. She was too pure in her feelings and was too shy. The heroine Isabela recalled her love experience. She remembered that when she first met Vincent during her travels, she was beaten up by him in the ruins. At that time, Isabela was young and hot-blooded. She was proficient in gemstone spells. She didn't hold back and beat Vincent until his face was swollen. In the end, she accidentally triggered a trap and the two of them were trapped underground. What happened next could be said to be a reversal. Although Isabela was powerful, she only wanted to obtain the treasures in the ruins. She had no interest in archaeology. On the contrary, Vincent, who was beaten down, relied on his knowledge to find a way out. The two of them turned from enemies to friends along the way and worked closely together. Finally, they managed to escape with their lives. To be honest, Isabela had always felt that this episode was quite strange. She even suspected that Vincent had some strange XP. However, Vincent had been quite normal all these years, so she didn't think too much about it. After that, Vincent traveled with Isabela's team to many places. His strength grew stronger as time passed. However, as the heir to the kingdom of Sofia, Isabela did not reveal her identity. A year later, the journey ended. Isabela, who knew what her little brother was thinking, could only leave with a kiss and a sigh before leaving without saying goodbye. It wasn't until 5 years later that the two of them met again at the Evening Sage Club. Although Vincent couldn't see her face and her voice had been altered, he still vaguely recognized Isabela. The two of them, who met again, felt guided by fate. Their old feelings for each other were rekindled, and they finally got together. There was no doubt that Isabella and Vincent's relationship was a result of many twists and turns. Although they were engaged, it was actually a free-spirited relationship. It was a relationship that was deep and could withstand many twists and turns. However, in Isabella's eyes, her little sister's relationship with Xia Luo was not. An engagement that required benefits was a taboo for the Sophia family. In fact, because of the loyalty source substance, the Sophia royal family's females had the right to refuse an engagement. Situations like Xia Luo's situation were very rare. It could only be said that the Sophia family had lost this fine tradition after hundreds of years of independent development. When they first met and discovered that Xia Luo was a super genius, Isabella should have cancelled her engagement and given her freedom. However, the identity of Luo Ya's little brother made her feel helpless. More importantly, although it wasn't obvious, Xia Luo seemed to be really moved. Xia Luo, he's your future husband. What are you afraid of? No, actually, our engagement can be annulled, it's not about the engagement. Don't you like him? Isabella's straightforward shot was as if she had ripped off Charlotte's concealment. The girl's eyes widened and her face turned as red as blood. I didn't, huh? You didn't? The queen snorted at the brown-haired girl's feeble explanation. At the same time, she was angered by her hurried denial. She thought for a moment and stared into Xia Luo's eyes. Well, since you said so, I'll give you two choices. If you like him, you can save him personally. This is a great opportunity. Originally, there was only an engagement, but you can rely on saving his life to truly connect with him and gain a deeper bond. If you don't like him, then leave. I'll use conventional methods to maintain his condition. No matter what, his life won't be in danger. Isabella's words stunned Xia Luo. Her gaze became conflicted and her body began to tremble. The queen sighed when she saw this. Suddenly, her heart softened. She looked at her younger sister and said earnestly, Charlotte, our origin substances pretty much guarantee that we will be faithful to one person until the end of our lives. There are countless women in our clan who are too ashamed to pursue a relationship and end up in a tragic state. Do you want to follow in their footsteps? Think about your opponents. It's almost inevitable that other girls will appear around a boy like Luoya. If you don't have enough bonds with him before they take action, how do you plan to protect your family? Isabella's last sentence was like a violent blow to the brown-haired girl's body. Xia Luo's eyes flashed with the shadows of two girls, one with blonde hair and the other with silver hair. In the end, her attention returned to the word family. Her confused gaze gradually became firm and her body gradually stopped trembling. Fine, it's about time. Isabella secretly clenched her fists. Xia Luo also felt that she had made up her mind. I understand, Sister Isabella. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.